Shen can't clear. Sandberg holds it in. Pionk again to Nemesnikov. He fires it. They shoot and score. And the Jets have life. Minute 55 to go. It's 3-2. Parayko behind the net. Off Buchnevich. He can't clear. Fanning on the shot as Ehlers gets it again. They dump it in front. They've scored. The Winnipeg Jets have tied the game with 1.6 seconds to go in Game 7. Lowry to the line. Pionk to Fleury. Fleury, side of the net to Connor. Connor into the far corner, back to the blue line. Back to Neil Pionk. Traffic, they score! A deflected puck, and the season is over for the St. Louis Blues. The Winnipeg Jets win in double overtime with 3:50 to go, completing a miraculous comeback and ending a special St. Louis Blues season.
Yeah, that one stinks. That one sucks. Just from 2-goal lead and 2 6-on-5 goals against, and second and a half away from closing out the series. Sucks. It's brutal. There's no other words to really describe that one.
So, didn't quite feel the same as the last NHL game that went to multiple overtimes in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That, of course, took place back in 2019 for Jim Montgomery. Pretty similar feelings to this one and that one. Blue Stars 2019, that was the last time that an NHL Game 7 required multiple overtimes, and then there was the game last night. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. The Scott Lee Heating mic drop feature is open and ready to go for you over on the 101 ESPN app. Ladies and gentlemen, that one sucked. Ugh. There's no other way to phrase it, man. It was a brutal, brutal way to lose. I was on the plane last night coming home from Pittsburgh, and we are getting ready to land. We're going through the final descent as that goal goes in the back of the Blues net. And I'm just thinking,
Pilot, take me back up.
I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, I had like everything ready going through my head on. We were already starting, just full disclosure, we were starting to figure out, okay, what guests do we need this week? What are we going to do to wrap up this series, to start previewing the next one? And then, boom, you get punched in the face at the end of regulation. And then my initial thought, I don't know how you guys felt about it. I was like, oh my God, they just lost. Like, I know they didn't lose in regulation, but they just lost in regulation. They come out in the first overtime, and it's like, all right, nobody really did much of anything in that first overtime period. It almost felt like a boxing match where you're feeling each other out, right? And then you get into the second period in overtime, and my mindset almost completely shifts, where it's like, okay, if Winnipeg wasn't able to take advantage of all of the momentum coming to their side, maybe the Blues could still pull this one out. And we'll get a game one with the Blues versus the Stars in the round 2 of the playoffs. Obviously, it didn't go that way. Absolutely brutal. And Alex, I was listening to your post-game show yesterday as we're getting off of the plane. I thought you summed it up perfectly well. It sucks. It's brutal. Every word you could possibly use to describe the heartbreak that took place last night, and also, hot damn, what a fight for this team to get into the position where you could go to Winnipeg, and with 2 seconds remaining, you were about to close out a Game 7 on the road in a season that you had no business making the playoffs and required a franchise record 12-game winning streak just to get there. And then when you're down 3-2 in the series, you come back home and you battle your ass off to force the Game 7, and then you have it won. You have it right in your grasp. So there are multiple perspectives on what we have witnessed this season, what you saw last night. Alex, what was your perspective on that game?
Man, you said it was a punch to the face. I felt like it was just a straight nut shot. That's what it felt like last night. I mean, look, I tried to be the voice of reason on postgame, and people were not having it. Maybe bad idea by me, because that's a really dark place to be in. There's no better way. There's no other way to sum it up than saying, like, it's one of the worst losses in franchise history for the playoffs. Like, I can think of 2 other ones that stung about as much as this one does, and it was Steve Yzerman's shot from the blue line that beat John Casey. That stung, and I was 9 years old. And then I could think of Owen Nolan with the slap shot when the Blues were the President's Trophy team, and Roman Turek let that puck squeak by him. But both of those series never really felt like the Blues were the better team. The reason this one stings so much is because the Blues were the better team. And, there was a play with 4 minutes and 53 seconds left to go in the third period that Nikolai Ehlers got in on a breakaway on Jordan Binnington, and he made the glove save. And at that moment, I looked at Grant Franson and I said, he's locked in. This isn't happening. They're not coming back. I didn't expect that Winnipeg Jets push at the end. And maybe that's shame on me because, look, that's a very desperate team. I had Murat Ates on pregame last night, and he told me if they lose the Winnipeg Jets, there will be talk of blowing this team up. That's the position that they were in. So I understand that desperation was going to take over for Winnipeg, and the Blues just weren't the desperate team. So as much as that nut shot hurt last night from the Winnipeg Jets and sitting on this where you lost with less than 3 seconds to go, because once that went to overtime, that looked like a Blues team that was still in shock. But the part that just kind of took over that darkness for me last night was the fact that 3 months ago, we were discussing the Blues potentially picking first overall.
And 2 months ago, we were talking about them trading their captain at the trade deadline.
Guys,
and it was real. Like, there were actual, real, legitimate conversations to the point where I said, Parayko's out, you got to do it. Like, these things happened, man, and it wasn't all that long ago.
And 5 games ago, we were talking about, you know what, great season, and if this comes to a sweep, so be it.
Yep.
So
win one. At least get one at home.
And they not only win one, you chase the Vezina winning and Hart Trophy winning goaltender, who I'm expecting to win both of those in 3 games. And it came down to you holding on to a lead for 2 minutes. And here's the thing, guys. I understand it sucks to cough up a 2-goal lead. This is the position that the Blues were in, a team that was learning the ropes of getting to this level. And you just took the President's Trophy team to Game 7 in double overtime. So, yeah, my lower half hurts. My crotch hurts a little bit. I'm going to have to put some ice on it.
I don't feel like I'm going to recover.
But you know what? I am going to recover. It's going to heal. And next thing you know, they're going to be steel because it's not going to hurt as much.
Can't promise you that. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. We did get a couple of texts that basically said, guys, don't sunshine and lollipop this. They choked. 2 goals up, 2 minutes to go.
Stop it.
Knowing the problem they have when the goalie is pulled, just a total choke job. There's some truth to that. Like, I think both of these things can be true. Did the Blues choke last night down the stretch? 100%. Yes, they did. Booch, you can't ice the puck there. You can't. It's the worst case scenario in that exact moment.
If you're going to ice it, get it on net. Like, that's the thing.
I think he tried. I think that was the goal of what he was trying to do. Just didn't get it on net.
I've never seen anybody shoot over the net from that distance.
But see, I actually was okay with that decision because, look, it went against you. It was an icing. Win the faceoff, clear the puck. The Blues had 4 opportunities. But you had 4 opportunities to get that puck out of the zone before Winnipeg scored. Sure. If he puts that in, game's over. Game is over, and there's like a minute 15 seconds left.
The goal there has to be get out of this.
Yeah.
Right? And so maybe you're right, Alex. There's some aggressive nature there where you're like, hey, I'm trying to end the game right here and now. Don't even worry about the next minute 15 or whatever it was at that moment in time. We need to get this puck on net, try to end this game as quick as possible, I suppose. To me, like, dude, just get it out of the zone, whatever that requires. And then if you're able to get it out of the zone, I think you get Thomas out there on the side for him. Like, they could have gotten into a board battle, and then maybe Thomas retrieves the puck, gets it back to Booch, and boom, game over. The time is the most important factor in that moment, though, and he was able to take off basically 0 time.
Yeah, that was
going with what he did.
That was the Bobby Plager quote. Time is the worst competitor you're going up against in the game.
But also, that is the let's look at this from the last 2 minutes perspective and have 0 context to how we got there whatsoever. I'm not sunshine and lollipopping you. I'm telling you, it's important to have some perspective on this stuff. And yes, last night sucked. If we're only going to break down last night's game and have 0 perspective on how we got there or what took place to get to that moment, then yeah, it sucked. Also, dude, this team deserves so much credit for what they did this season. And that game sucks.
Yeah.
And I think the way that you will remember this series all depends on what comes next. Yeah. All of it. Because if nothing comes from that, if you don't learn from the mistakes and you don't build the young guys up and they don't continue to take that next step, and progress is not always linear. It is not a guarantee that Bolduc is a better player next year than he was this year. It is not a guarantee that Dylan Holloway comes back from this injury and is just magically not only what he was last year, but a better version of that player. No guarantee Jordan Kyrou takes this and learns from it again. There's no guarantee of any of this stuff. There's no guarantee Jordan Bennington is the same dude that he was this postseason. You'd like to say that, but it's not a guarantee. So if they don't, you're going to remember this as the opportunity that was completely missed by the Blues. But if they do take this, learn from it, take that next step, and next year make the playoffs again, and you get to the second round or maybe the Western Conference Finals, you will remember this as the moment where the young guys took that opportunity and grew from it, and it will be viewed as a turning point in the franchise's history moment. It all depends on what comes next. Yep. History will determine how you remember that game 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Yeah, as it stands right now, I don't label it a choke job. Yes, you coughed away that lead. There's no question about it. But to me, when a team chokes, it's the one that had aspirations. And I don't think anybody expected this Blues team to win a Stanley Cup or go deep into the playoffs. Now, you had the chance. You were the better team, but you let it slip away. But, BK, you were absolutely correct. We will be talking about this next year if the team misses the playoffs. Mm-hmm. We will be talking about this next year if your top players do not perform, and we're talking about having to make roster changes. You'll go back to this one and say this was the moment that shifted the franchise. But my expectation is not there. We'll hear from Curbs in a little bit, but he believes the retool is over. I'm not there yet, but I do believe that we are not talking about gaining assets and trying to find better players. Now you figured it out. You've got top players. You've got stars. You've got the coach that can make this team go. Now you got to take it and become a competitive team from the start next year. And if we aren't talking about it, then yeah, by the middle of next season, if we're talking about another potential top 5 pick and then they go on another miraculous run,
yes,
I'm going to look back on this and say that 2.3 seconds is what screwed you up.
From the 573, they learned the next 6 to 8 years are going to be fun. Shut up with your pessimism, BK.
Yeah,
dude, if you're gonna live in a darkness stage for the next couple of months, so be it, man. But I am not gonna do that after this season.
It's fair to stay in that dark spot for 24 hours.
I don't think I'm being pessimistic. My outlook from that game is that sucked, brutal, horrible, no good, no fun. Didn't enjoy it whatsoever to finish off that game. And also, I think they're going to learn from this. I do think it will be not a turning point, but a jumping off point for this team. And I think we'll look back at that game and say, man, that series really, look at what that did for the young players and how much it allowed them to grow into the players that they're ultimately going to be long term. I view that as being the likely destination for this team. I don't know that that is going to happen because how could you possibly know with any certainty what is going to come next? Sometimes you just miss your opportunity. And the Western Conference this year, you had an opportunity to be the COVID season Montreal Canadiens because everybody's banged up, man. You look at the Winnipeg Jets, I have no idea what they're going to look like in the next round. No idea. Morrissey hurt right now.
They're losing in 4 or 5
right now. They very well could. But the Stars are also banged up right now. Robertson wasn't playing at the end of that series against the Colorado Avalanche. Heiskanen wasn't there. McKinnon, after the series, was asked about, hey, how do you feel about the fact that you guys just lost to the Stars the way that you did? And he said, well, they're without their best forward and their best defenseman, and we couldn't beat them. Not great. So that's the entire Western Conference right now. Everybody's banged up. So you had an opportunity out there. It got away from you. It'll be remembered based on what happens next. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we will talk a little bit about the Cardinals today. I promise it won't be too much because we want to hear a lot on the Blues. Want to hear from you. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We also have the mic drop feature over on the 101 ESPN app. How did you feel last night coming off of that loss in Game 7?
Darkness, my old friend.
Against the Winnipeg Jets. If you guys want to get your thoughts in, the mic drop feature is the best place to do so. Coming up next, what did we learn about the Blues' flaws in this series that they can potentially fix going into the offseason? We'll talk about it briefly next year on BK and Ferrario. All right, people are upset. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show.
Don't say. I had to end postgame last night early, which I went like an hour and a half, but people were very angry.
I don't blame anybody for that, dude.
That's fans.
I was talking to Kara last night because we were on the plane. We're getting ready to deboard, and she's like, hey, that was a really good season, right? And I was like, Kara, if only you knew how people are going to react to this game. And she's like, why? They were so close. I was like, that's why. Because you felt like you had it won.
Yeah.
And then it's just ripped away from you, and that's heartbreaking. I was like, if there was a choice and you could hit the button and you're like, I promise you are going to lose this game. How would you prefer to lose? 6-0, you never felt like you had a chance, or the way the Blues did last night? Which one would you rather lose? I think for a lot of people, you'd rather just get your teeth kicked in.
Oh, yeah. Just kill me in the first period so I'm not going to have to worry about it.
That's how I felt in the Super Bowl when the Chiefs, it was over. It was over the game the moment that ball was kicked off. They never had a chance. And midway through the first quarter, okay, this is the way it's going to go. I can either turn the game off or just watch this and understand there's nothing positive that's coming from this. What happened to the Blues last night was the opposite, where you felt the entire game as though it was yours.
Yeah.
It is our game for the taking, and then it is ripped away from you in a way that you have no time to prepare for it. You can't see it coming, and then it's just gone. And the season ends with a thud. And this is the result. Our text line right now, which has hundreds of messages of people just throwing crap at the wall, basically, and being angry that the game took place the way that it did.
That's how you get pink eye, so don't do that, ladies and gentlemen.
I get it. I don't blame anybody for feeling that way. And today is the day where if you are frustrated, you are angry, we do want to hear from you. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. I just want you guys to know up front, I have multiple perspectives on that game, and one of them is, God, that sucked.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it can be this could lead to something greater point. Alex, what did we learn about the Blues' flaws in this series, though? Because they lost. Ultimately, you lost for a reason.
They did? I thought they won.
So what did we learn? What are they missing? How do they take that next step that we're talking about?
Well, look, the first thing that their biggest flaw right now is they didn't exercise their demons from this season. 6-on-5 when the goaltender is pulled was a massive problem for this Blues team. When Jim Montgomery took over until the end of the regular season, the Blues allowed 12 goals with the goaltender pulled. That is the most in the National Hockey League by any team. 4 was the next closest, and it was to the Detroit Red Wings. They had 8. So there was a 4 differential of giving up those goals, and they gave up 1 in the postseason, which, of course, was the worst one that you can give up. That, to me, is their biggest flaw right now. They've got to figure out what their problem is. And Jim Montgomery even said it last night. It's that starts with me as a coach. I've got to figure out what game plan we need to have for that one. I was looking at it last night. It has been something that has followed Jim Montgomery around throughout his, at least, time in the NHL as a head coach. If you go back to the time he was in Boston, they gave up the most goals with the goaltender pulled when he was the head coach there.
Can I give a little context on this?
I would absolutely love for you to do so because I needed it last night.
Do you know when those, were those mostly in the President Trophy season?
I isolated it in his time with Boston. So the first 2 years, it was still the first in the National Hockey League. Last season, they gave up 3 of them before he was fired, which obviously is part of the reason.
Sure.
But even if you take that one away, that still was 14, which was the most.
The reason I bring it up, when you're up a lot, when you're winning a lot,
and they were the President's Trophy
team is going to have their goalie pulled a ton because you are ahead.
Yep.
So it just means more opportunity. So a little bit of context for that. That doesn't mean they were good. Obviously, you want to avoid that, but a little bit of context.
And I think that's important because, then if you do what I did last night, because I just started to go down a darkness hole, which I found to myself and pulled myself out of, when Drew Bannister was the head coach, they allowed the second fewest goals with the goaltender pull. They were bad. I didn't think of that when I looked at it, but you look at it, and because the YouTube is so positive, it's the coach is the problem. It's they maybe got rid of the good coach. And then I pulled myself out of that darkness area. But that is a problem for the Blues. They've got to figure that out. That's what really hurt them in the postseason and frankly down the stretch. That to me was their biggest flaw. But, guys, if your biggest flaw is when the other team is in desperation mode and they pull the goaltender and you can't hold on to a lead, people aren't going to like to hear this. That's a good flaw to have because your other flaws could be, your defense is awful and you're getting scored on willy-nilly. Your goaltender can't make the save, which I think is something Connor Hellebuck's problem is, or you got no offense. But if we're talking about it 6-on-5 and that's the biggest flaw, look, you didn't fix that. That was something you needed to right. And I guarantee you it's something Jim Montgomery's going to be working a lot on this offseason. But for me, that's not a bad flaw to have for a team that's in the early stages of a winning window. Because, I think back to 2011 all the way up until 2018, 2019. That was a team that their biggest flaw was they had no ability to push back. They didn't have the killer mentality. 3 years into them being a playoff team, they couldn't get outside the second round. Doug Armstrong had to basically use the quote of, we need to stab the opponent in the head and kill him. That doesn't seem to be a problem for the Blues.
My biggest theme to the series, and this is whether it's like the 6-on-5 thing or I would say shooting as well, it's finish.
Yeah.
Like this team far too often has an issue with finishing. And this is something that Kyrou was snake-bitten on all season long. And I hope he spends the entire offseason doing this. I'm not like specifically calling out Jordan Kyrou or anything. I just think he has the potential to be a legit star in this league if he is a better finisher. Dude, think about how many transition, like breakaway opportunities he had where he just didn't finish. And this season, you could have added probably another 5 to 7 goals to his regular season goal total and another 3 or 4 of those to the playoffs as well, if he's a better finisher in those opportunities. Beyond that, just literally driving to the lane, driving to the net more often. Yeah. If he does that, like, you just give yourself more opportunities. So for him specifically, but it's the entire team. Robert Thomas as well. Last night, when they're mentioning it on the broadcast, we're like, man, I really wish Robert Thomas would start shooting more.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was better at that this season than he has been at times in the past.
The postseason, though, he passed up opportunities.
No doubt. And maybe some of that is like he's still not at 100%. There's a lot of things that can go into it, but individual plays, finishing them into your own zone, finish the play, get it out as quick as possible. I thought they were really good at that at home in the postseason against the Winnipeg Jets. Not so great at it on the road. If you're looking at the game, right, the 6-on-5 situations, dude, finish this off.
Yeah.
Kill it off. Get out of there. Get it out of your own end. Bleed this clock down as much as possible. Just the theme to the offseason to me should be finishing.
Yeah.
They've got to be better in that area. And it applies to every aspect of their game.
And part of the reason why you weren't able to, or part of the reason why you put yourself in the 6-on-5 situation is because you stopped playing in the third period. Like, you stopped shooting the puck. You stopped playing the way that you played in the first 2 periods last night. You outshot them in the first period 7-3. You were right there with them in the second period 10-9, and they had a power play, which they got 3 shots on goal. So even strength, you outshot them in the second period. And then whether it was you got into a shell and you started to play defensive hockey, or you couldn't stop the wave that the Winnipeg Jets were bringing. And you can't win if you're going to have 4 shots on goal in the third period. You can't win when you get away from the dump the puck in, chase after it, win the board battle, start going low to high, and they weren't doing that. I don't think Connor Hellebuck was good last night. Connor Hellebuck was really good in overtime.
I was about to say he was really good in the last 40 minutes.
Fine, but he got to his game because you stopped playing.
It felt to me, I mentioned this before the show today, it felt to me like you were going up against an ace. And a lot of the time they will say the best time to get an ace is early. And the Blues got him early a little bit.
Yeah.
But they didn't take full advantage. There were still some opportunities that were left on the table early on in that game. And instead of being up, 4-1, 5-1, they were only up a couple of goals, and that left the opportunity there for Winnipeg to be able to come back. And eventually Hellebuck did find his game. Yeah. I felt like by the third period, about midway through the third period, he looked like he was locked in. And I think that gave them a big boost.
Yeah.
I think the Jets overall, they feed off of Connor Hellebuck. You could feel that when the series was in Winnipeg. He was one of the driving forces why he might be the Hart Trophy winner this year. They could feel that.
Yeah.
And that was part of what got them to their game. All right, let's get to a couple mic drops, Alex. We want to hear from you guys today. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You can also get involved via the Scott Lee Heating mic drop feature on the 101 ESPN app. How did you feel last night as that final goal goes in and the Blues are eliminated from the playoffs? Let's hear from Alexander.
Let's be real. We weren't supposed to be there. We played our asses off for 2 months. We were 2 months deep into playing playoff hockey where other teams didn't need to. This team needed to go through that. They needed to feel what it was like because they had a bunch of players who didn't really know what playoff hockey was about and how it felt to lose in heartbreaking fashion. This is another building block to build a better team that's going to be a cup contender for the next 5 years.
I hope that's right.
Yeah.
I hope that's the way that they view it is, hey, this is our opportunity to build those calluses.
Yeah. Again, man, the fact that we're talking about the biggest flaw of this team was the fact that they couldn't stop 6-on-5 situations. Man, that is the best flaw to have going into an offseason because that's just a matter of focusing on coaching style and making sure you got the right players to commit to certain plays. Rick Bowness, 2 years ago with the Winnipeg Jets, or no, it was last year when they got bounced by Vegas, he had a press conference after they lost the series and said, we are a soft team that doesn't know how to push back. Joey brought this up on the postgame last night. Bonus was not there last year at the end of the season. They brought in Scott Arniel, but he said this team's got to figure out how to not be soft. That's a bigger problem to have, and they were almost soft again in a series. So if we're talking about 6-on-5, and maybe you can label being 6-on-5 and not being able to stop the wave soft, but to me, that's a flaw that a coach can fix and a player can look at and say, we've got to be more committed.
All right, let's hear from Carson via the mic drop feature.
Look, I mean, the series sucks. You lose like that, it sucks. However, the front office sees all the flaws now and knows what to fix. Personally, I think you need a second-line center, and I think you need our top 4 right-hand defensemen. I don't think Falk got it done. I think the game-tying goal was his fault. And I don't know that Schenner is your second-line center. A guy like Sam Bennett makes a lot of sense.
We are going to get into what we think the Blues need to acquire this offseason, like our way too early look at that coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. I thought Falk was mostly fine in this series. I thought there were a couple of plays that certainly he would want back. I thought Shin was missing Dylan Holloway. I'm not sure there was any player in this series that was missing somebody more than Holloway on that line in general. The Kyrou thing, like Kyrou had his moments in this series. I thought overall he played pretty well for the most part. I thought after that hit from it was Stanley, right, that hit him. I thought he shied away from some of the contact. Agreed. You could feel that last night. They specifically mentioned it on the TBS broadcast where they're like, hey, I feel like the compete level is not necessarily there at the level that you would expect for a third period or overtime from Jordan Kyrou. And you could see it. There would be times where he gets into a corner, he just like gives up on the puck instead of going to battle in the corner. And he's not a guy that you expect to win many of those battles, just not his game. And that's fine. You can live with that. But I do think things changed a little bit for him. They were really missing Dylan Holloway on that line. That's a big part of it, so that changes some things for sure. But yeah, second line center, that's something they should probably be looking at this offseason if they can. And another defenseman in that top 4, I think, would be a nice addition as well. Those are 2 areas that I think you could potentially look at there.
Yeah, I mean, not to sell the farm into what we're going to get a little bit later, but I think Shen was fine in this postseason. Shen played the role that he played from the Four Nations break until the end of the season. The difference was he didn't have the guys around him to make plays. And that happens a lot with your centerman. I mean, look at Game 6 for the Winnipeg Jets when they didn't have Mark Scheifele. Kyle Connor and Gabe Vilardi were absent. Now, they came to play in game number 7, but it does happen at times. Shen was on the ice for 3 goals against in that game last night, so I can understand being upset with that. I don't know if it was one thing that the Blues lost that series, whether it was a second-line center or a right-shot defenseman. I know people don't like Justin Falk. I actually think Justin Falk had a great series. I think Justin Falk might be somebody you don't want playing 24 minutes a night, but Justin Falk was somebody that did step up and create some offense for you and play well. I mean, he and Philip Broberg were on the ice for 1 even-strength goal against, and it was Falk on the ice, not Philip Broberg, and it was a mix-up with that, so.
All right. T-Bone, I know you're going to be upset about this. We're not going to talk about the Cardinals coming up.
Oh, what the?
314-399-9646 is the cover service X line to get involved in the show.
Anymore.
Darn it.
Questions and answers in 15 minutes. We're going to stick with the Blues. And Alex, I think this is maybe going to feed into some of the frustrations that fans have today. There's some news that just came out from another team in the NHL that serves as a reminder that this doesn't always get better from here. And we very well could look back at this season, this series, that game as the one that got away. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario back with you to tell you about my friends out at Classic Air Care who have been making people comfortable since 1926. And when it comes to that HVAC system, whether you're somebody who has a 25-year-old one and you're just trying to make it last a little bit longer, or if you got a brand new one, that HVAC system, it is so important to make sure that you're staying up to date with the maintenance on it, making sure it's good to go for the seasons where it's getting all of the work. When it's hot in the summer, when it's cold in the winter, that's where you need Classic Air Care. And I urge you to check in on the maintenance agreement over at Classic Air Care. It's a great program to be a part of. Twice a year in the spring and the fall, they come out, they check your unit, they clean your unit, they make sure everything's working okay so that it can get you through those seasons. But if problems come up, and look, problems always happen to come up with HVAC systems, you get priority scheduling. So when you call, if you're a part of the maintenance agreement, they get out to you as quick as they can compared to just somebody who is calling in to schedule an appointment. So this is why you need to check out Classic Air Care for the maintenance agreement. They got a filter subscription where it sends you air filters on a monthly basis, or you got financing options if you're in the market of purchasing a new HVAC system. Let's check them out online, classicaircare.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues fell to the Winnipeg Jets last night 4-3 in double overtime as the Jets win the series in 7 games, bringing the Blues season to an end. Tomorrow they'll have their end-of-season press conferences, and BK and Ferrario will be broadcasting live from Enterprise Center tomorrow. And the Cardinals took 2 of 3 from the New York Mets over the weekend. Tonight they start a 3-game set at home against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Miles Michaelis will be on the mound tonight for Game 1. 6:45 is first pitch. The Sports Center is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. CNLondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
The team that I look to, like I'd like to emulate right now, or even be quicker, is LA. I saw the way like New Jersey and Buffalo and Detroit did it. That's 5, 6, 7 years. LA did it very quickly, and I'd like to do it very quickly.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, it's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So the LA Kings were the formula, right? That was the model for the Blues. We want to get back into contention sooner rather than later. It was a good model to follow. You get back to the playoffs after a couple of years of missing. For the LA Kings, it was 3 seasons. It was 2019, 2020, 2021. Great timing for them. Basically, hey, COVID pandemic hits. Nobody's getting capacity crowds anyways. Let's go ahead and miss the playoffs 3 consecutive years.
Smart.
And then they get right back into it after drafting Quentin Byfield. They also drafted a couple other studs that they decided to trade away for some reason or another.
Not that Jack Hughes that you're thinking of. It's a different Jack Hughes.
Brock Faber was drafted by them.
That's the Brock Faber you're thinking of.
Not Kirill Kaprizov, but Kirill Kursanzov. He was drafted by them.
I don't even know who the bleep that is.
His cousin, I think. Brant Clark was also selected by them, 8th overall selection.
Hold on, are they cousins because their first names are Kirill?
Correct, yeah. They're both from the KHL, probably related in some capacity or another.
Good.
But the Kings are able to get things back on track relatively quickly. Alex, this to me, though, is the warning sign of why, if you are a Blues fan and you are upset today, I totally get it. The Kings just fired their GM today.
They mutually agreed to part ways.
Okay, they fired their GM today. And the reason why you do this is because after they reached where the Blues are at today, here's what happened, Alex. Losing 7 versus Edmonton, losing 6 versus Edmonton, losing 5 versus Edmonton, losing 6 versus Edmonton. They have not reached the second round of the playoffs in 4 consecutive postseasons that they have reached because they've been knocked back down by a divisional rival every single time.
Because they're stuck in the Pacific Division.
They're good. 99, 104, 99, 105 points. They're a good team. A really good team, in fact. And they're consistently getting to the place where the Blues were at this season. And they can't find a way to break through. They've tried different things. They made a huge trade a couple of years ago that could not have backfired anymore, and it helps to build what the Jets are right now. Right? They go out there and make that trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois. It was aggressive. I kind of respect it in a way. But it could not have worked out any worse.
Yeah. To be honest, it was desperate. It was a desperate move because after they got bounced the second consecutive year to Edmonton in 6 games, that was when they went out there and they traded Gabe Vilardi, Rasmus Kupari, and Alex Iafallo. 3 guys who Rasmus Kupari was kind of a fringe middle 6 winger. But the 2 guys were both considered top 6 wingers that were under the age of 27, if I'm not mistaken.
29, I think it's 25.
So Iafallo was a little bit older, but both guys were considered top 6 wingers. You spent top picks on those guys, but you got desperate because you kept losing to Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and you said, we've got to go get better down the middle. And you went out there and you got a liability in Pierre-Luc Dubois that did not work out. And to me, that's desperate. And that's the difference. That's what Doug Armstrong can't do after what just took place.
It's desperate. It's also super aggressive. It depends. Like, if it works out, it's aggressive. If it doesn't work out, it's desperate, right? We judge this based on what comes next.
But isn't it desperate when you go after a guy who, he had 27 goals, but you knew he was a problem in Winnipeg?
Maybe, but if it works out for you, you look at it the way that it was for the Washington Capitals this year, where now they've gone on and they're in the second round of the playoffs, in part because Pierre-Luc Dubois has become the player that he once was. So you knew he had the talent. It was a matter of, can we get him to be that here? And LA thought at the time the answer was yes. Obviously, the answer was a very resounding no for them. So whether it's that move or other moves that weren't made by LA, they end up where they are today, which is firing their GM. Now, the Blues aren't going to fire Doug Armstrong. He's already decided he's going to walk away after a couple of seasons. I'm not saying that. My point on bringing up the Kings and what they have decided to do today is that they were the model and they never were able to break through. Yep. So if you're a Blues fan today and you're thinking to yourself, they should have won that series. They had it. It was there for the taking, and with 2 seconds to go, you blew it. This is what the fear is that you don't break through. And this isn't a stepping stone moment. It is we had our chance. Nobody believed in us, but the Western Conference was crumbling because everybody is hurt right now. The Stars are not the team that they were during the regular season. The Jets were not the team that they were during the regular season. They were without arguably their best forward and their best defenseman at the end of that series, and you couldn't find a way to pull through. The Stars right now are without their best forward and their best defenseman. You look over on the Pacific side of things. Alex, you've been saying this for months. Pacific is just not as good as the Central Division.
Agreed.
You could potentially get through that, and you become the 2020 Montreal Canadiens, who nobody saw coming, and boom, you're playing in the Stanley Cup final. that was there for the Blues to potentially have this season, and they couldn't find a way to get it done.
Yeah.
That's the fear. If you are somebody that is pessimistic today, that is what you're looking at. Is Kings just did this with Rob Blake because he never was able to find a way to break through. There is no guarantee that the Blues don't follow the exact same path.
But you know why that fear subsides for me and why I've been so optimistic even after they lose that game is because I look at the LA Kings and you kind of dig a little deeper and you can see the issues with the LA Kings. Like, and I know Darcy Kemper was good this year for him, but they didn't have a goaltender that could get them through. They have Jim Hiller, a coach that isn't considered a top-tier head coach, but I'd also argue in that front that they had Todd McClellan and they couldn't get the job done, who is viewed as a top-tier coach. But there's elements of the LA Kings that you look at and you say, yeah, but they're not in the same spot. The LA Kings are kind of in we have to win now mode because Doughty and Kopitar are old and they're not getting any younger. The Blues don't have that. The main guys that they have we're talking about are 31 years old in Colton Parayko. Now, Braden Shen, of course, is up there in age, but he's still 33. So, like, the LA Kings, yes, you don't want to be that team. But the reason they move on from Rob Blake, partially, and this is just might be a tinfoil in my opinion, is I think the LA Kings know what's coming. I think the LA Kings are trying to get out in front of like what the Blues got out in front of like, hey, this might look ugly in a couple of years, so maybe we need to start planning on what this looks like moving forward. They thought that they were doing that. They tried to reset it quickly because they knew Doughty and Kopitar were older, and let's see if we can make this competitive. If you're Doug Armstrong, and I know that Doug Armstrong doesn't think this way, you just don't want to be aggressive. You don't want to be overly aggressive with it. Now, I understand, and we're going to get into this a little bit later.
There's a fine line, though, man. There's a fine line there.
There is, but you just have to know when that there's a difference between a winning window and there's a difference between a competitive window and a winning window, if that makes sense. Like, to me, being competitive in the playoffs is what the Blues were in 2011 and 2012 with Hitchcock. They were opening up the competitiveness where they say, we're going to be good for the next 10 years. The winning window hit at about 2015, 2016, when they were like, hey, this roster should be winning Stanley Cups. And then, of course, they made the aggressive moves in 2018, 2019. I don't think you're in that winning window. You're in that competitive window.
I don't know. I don't know because Binnington is your window. Your window is tied to how long is Jordan Binnington, this version of Jordan Binnington. And
that comes down to how confident, though, you are in Joel Hofer, because they seem to be pretty confident that Hofer's ready to take over for Binnington.
I can't be this confident in Hofer because Binnington is something special. He's unique. He is a goaltender that I think he's average in the regular season.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a shot against Binnington. I think he's an average goalie during the regular season. And then you get into the playoffs and he becomes all world. Last night, Binnington was amazing. He was absolutely spectacular in that game last night. The goals that he gave up, I would credit exactly 0 of them against Jordan Binnington. There's nothing he could do. You could have put, like, the best goalie you've ever seen in your life, whoever you believe that to be, he's not making those saves.
Yeah.
There's just nothing he could have done. So, to me, he's the guy that puts you into that winning window that you're talking about. And he's going to be 32 years old next year.
Yep.
And he might be great until he's 37. He might be. I don't know that. So if you think he's got 2 or 3 years left of this version of Jordan Binnington, you maybe have to be a little bit more aggressive than we're currently thinking. Not necessarily for next season, but very soon you might be making or thinking about making the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. Not that exact one, but something similar. So I think this stuff happens quicker than we give it credit for, where, oh boy, now we're good. Oh boy, now we are in our winning window. Oh boy, it's over. It happens just like that.
Yeah.
So I will be very curious to see how Doug Armstrong views that, because ultimately his perspective on it is the one that matters, certainly not mine.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear him talk about all of this tomorrow, because it will be fascinating. The part with Binnington, and you're right. I mean, we don't know what this could look like. It could break. He could get injured. You just don't know. But Jonathan Quick was great for the LA Kings all the way up until the year that they traded him in the 2022-2023 season, and he was 37 years old.
Sure.
So if you get a goalie, and typically, you know, goalies are hit or miss. Like, they could be good until they're 40, like Marc-Andre Fleury. They could be bad and be done in like 34, 33 years old. The Blues, though, I have to imagine, and hearing them talk about it, I believe they believe this. They think they've got the goalie that takes over in the future. And that's why, yes, you want to get aggressive, and yes, you know you've got a guy who can win you a cup, but you also don't want to get to the point where you blow it out of proportion and say, no, we need to do it now, and you make a move,
Absolutely.
and it sets you back 3 years, and that's the one thing you got to be hesitant about.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Coming up next, we'll get into questions and answers. Want to respond to this one real quick from the 573. BK, totally disagree with your comment. How old was Fleury when he was taking teams deep? Absolutely. And this is why I'm
also a Hall of Famer.
I'm leaving it open-ended, and maybe Binnington is too.
Yeah, you don't know.
I'm leaving this open-ended. I don't know how Binnington is going to age. And that's why I think you have to capitalize while in this window with Binnington in net, is that you never know how Joel Hofer is going to be in the playoffs until you get there with him. Right now, I know Binnington is a superstar in the playoffs. That dude is, if you could pick any goalie in the league for a playoff run for your team, he's in the top 3. Mm-hmm. So if you have that guy right now and you don't know how it's going to age, I'm not going all in this offseason. I want to see what this looks like when I build around it for a year. But if it doesn't take that next step next year, that's probably when you get to where the Kings were when they made that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, where you get hyper-aggressive. And that doesn't mean stupid. It means aggressive. And that could be a big free agent coming in. That could be a big trade. I don't know. But we're closer to that than maybe it feels right now because we just started the window. Next year's when it really takes off. Next year's when the expectations are back for your St. Louis Blues. All right, let's get into questions and answers coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Promise all of this rain is going to be going away soon, and we're going to get the sunshine, which means you're going to be in your backyard, maybe your front yard, spending time outside, which means you're going to be staring at your home a little bit more. And the exterior might look bad. It might look old. It might look worn down. You need to call Rhino Shield. The exterior of your home, and it is so important. It's the eye candy for the neighborhood. So make it look brand new. It makes the house feel brand new when you get the work done of Rhino Shield. And I can personally speak to this because we did this. We moved into our home. My wife did not like the exterior look, said it looked old and worn down. And so we called Darren, and he came out and explained everything that Rhino Shield does. And he told me, look, you could paint it, save the money that you want to, but you're going to be doing it year after year after year because all of the water is going to deteriorate the paint. All of the sun UV rays are going to deteriorate the paint. He said, use Rhino Shield. They're a ceramic coating that sticks 8 to 10 times thicker than any paint that you're going to buy. It's engineered to outlast paint, and they're so confident, they're backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. So call Darren, tell him Alex Ferrario sent you. You'll love the work that Rhino Shield does, and you'll get the coating of a rhino on your home. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25-RHINO.com.
314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now. Coming up in just a little bit, we'll talk about the Blues retool. And is it over? Earlier today, Chris Kerber said the answer to that question is yes. Do we agree with that assessment? We'll get into that at 12:05. But let's get to these from the 314. Guys, does the offseason revolve around the answer to the question, is Dvorsky ready?
No. This is going to be my argument as to why I don't know if the retool is over, because I still think there's guys that in the Blues' plans still need development. I don't think it revolves around Dvorsky, because they didn't have Dvorsky and they were competitive this year, and you're going to have Montgomery for a full season. I actually think the offseason is going to revolve around, are we comfortable with our defensemen?
Just the core in general.
The core of the defensemen in general. Because I wonder, as great as they were down the stretch, I wonder if the Blues are asking, how much do we believe in this?
I don't think he drives the entire offseason decision-making, but he does from the forwards perspective. Because the defenseman, I think you can do that separately. Whatever you want to do with the forwards, whether that is bring back Radek Faksa potentially and figure out what you do at that third-line center, or what you do with Braden Chen at the second-line center spot, that all depends on what that answer is to Dvorsky.
I think the offseason, like if I was doing a question that dictates what you're doing this offseason, it's what we were just talking about. Are you in your winning window, or are you in your competitive window right now? What opens in 2025? Because if you believe you're in your winning window, then it becomes I don't think Dvorsky's ready for that just yet. And then you get into the mindset of, okay, how do we plan for this? Does Sonny drop down to that fourth line for us next year? We let Faksa walk. And if you do that, it opens up a spot in your middle six for the center. How do we acquire a player that can come in and help us right away? That's probably the direction that you go. If it's the competitive window, though, maybe you re-sign Faksa. It gives you insurance with Sonny coming back as that third-line center. And then if Dvorsky does prove to be ready, you can kind of platoon some spots with Sonny serving as that extra guy, and he plays maybe 50 games next year the way that I think a lot of us expected him to do this year.
Yeah, my guess, this is just an assumption here, I think Dvorsky's going to be on this team next year. They're going to treat Dvorsky the same way they treated Bolduc. It's like, no, you need to develop. This is it now. I think you re-sign Faksa, you keep Sundqvist, and you look at this as we're going to slow play Dvorsky into this. We're going to use him as a centerman, but there's going to be learning curves. There's going to be nights that you're sitting up in the press box, and you're just going to learn on the fly with this one, so that by next year, when they get into that winning window, Dvorsky's had a full 82 games under his schedule.
All right, last question here from the 314. Guys, worst loss, Blues against Winnipeg last night or Colorado against Dallas on Saturday? So let's look at it as the series. Like, which one hurts worse for their fan base? I think it's not close. I think it's Colorado.
I agreed 100%. The way they lost and the position that they're in of, like, they believed they were a cup contender.
And the dude that did it to you.
Yeah.
It was the guy that you traded away.
Yeah.
And you thought, oh, we sent him to the Eastern Conference. If we see him, we'll be to the Stanley Cup. And then the Hurricanes said, no, go back to the Central.
Oh, yeah. Now you get to see him for the next decade in the division for that team.
There's something poetic about the fact that Rantanen was traded twice and made his way back to the Central Division. And the only team that has been eliminated in the playoffs was the team that traded away Colorado.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal.
And again, there was cup aspirations. They're in their winning window. They have to win.
And they might get worse before they get better.
Yep.
That's the hardest thing is, like, now you've got some really tough decisions to make if you're Colorado. You've mentioned this for a while, Alex. They better win now. Mm-hmm. And this is why I don't think I would have traded Rantanen.
Nope, I would not have.
I would have either bit the bullet and re-signed him long-term, or at least, hey, we got one more ride. This is the last dance. Rantanen's going elsewhere. But we got to put this thing together in a way where we're really going for it right now.
Because you win 2 cups this year with Rantanen and he walks, you got 2 cups under your belt. And then guess what? You still have McKinnon and Makar.
Yep.
You're good.
Yeah, they get Natchez out of it, and Natchez is a really good player. I'd like to have as a part of my team as well.
Yeah, but you don't know if Natchez is going to be there. Sure. I mean, Natchez is going to demand a lot of money because he's been a really good player.
He's got, what, one more year left?
He's got 2 more years, I think.
Yeah. So you've got a little bit of time. You extended the window with him, but he's...
Yeah, but at the same time...
Breaking news. Mikko Rantanen, that ain't the same thing as Martin Natchez.
No. Yeah, well, and Natchez, by the way, is going to be up for a contract the same time that Cale Makar is going to be up for a contract, and that guy's going to get paid.
Coming up in 15 minutes, Katie Wu, Cardinals Insider, joins the show. But next, is the Blues retool officially over? We'll talk about it here on PK and Ferrario. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So, Alex, I was listening earlier today to Chris Kerber, who was on with The Morning Show, and they had a really good conversation. Highly recommend it. Check it out on the podcast page after the show today, 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app. He was asked specifically, like, how do you feel about the Blues now? What's this all mean, given the fact that they got to Game 7 and were, 2 seconds away from advancing to the second round of the playoffs? What does this mean for the Blues in the long term? He said, well, the Blues retool's over. Rebuild, retool, whatever you want to call it, that reword that was associated with the Blues, it's gone. Now the Blues are trying to win. Like, they're in that competitive window. Alex, it's not me or you disagreeing with Kerber anyway. I think there are different perspectives that you can take on this team and where they're at right now. But do you agree with that? Do you think that the Blues retool is now over?
So I'm 50-50 on this, and I hate riding the fence, but we do it here on BK and Ferrario.
Like, our favorite thing. Sponsored by the best fence company in St. Louis. Insert fence name here.
You will be the best fence company
you would like
that
to have an
sponsors that
endorsement on
segment.
this company. We are happy to have you.
On one hand, I do get where Curbs is coming from, because there will be no conversations if you miss the playoff next year of like, hey, they're still building something. No, you're past that, because you just took the President's Trophy team to Game 7. Like, there's no more giving you the leeway of missing the playoffs anymore. It's you better be a playoff team next year. This year we came into it and we were like, if they miss it, they're still developing. That's not the case anymore. But I also can understand the perspective from Doug Armstrong and company, because 4 guys that they spent assets on still have not even tasted the National Hockey League that they deem a part of this core. They drafted Otto Stenberg and Theo Lindstein, 2 guys in the first round that they believed will be part of this team. Those are the guys that they got assets for trading away Ryan O'Reilly and Vladimir Tarasenko. And then the other one that they have on that list is Alex Santeri-Kaskamaki, that they believe is another piece of that forward group, and so is Zach Dean. All of these guys were brought in because they were supposed to be the fix for this core. Now, sometimes guys don't pan out. Sometimes guys don't really develop the way that you need to. It's why you garner as many assets as possible. But I don't know if I look at this and say, like, yeah, you have to be a competitive team next year, because I do still feel like they are developing some of these younger players that are supposed to impact their team's future. But that's where I'm 50-50, because I also will not look at this next year if they miss the playoffs and say, well, it was a good season. No, you need to make the playoffs.
Okay, that's what I was about to ask you as a follow-up question. What are your expectations going into next season?
You're
just
a playoff
win-loss,
team.
like what's the expectation going in?
You're a playoff team.
You're not in a retool. You can't have those expectations if you're in the retool. It's one or the other. Now, this year, the hope was you could make it to the playoffs. That was their hope. That was their aspiration. It was not an expectation. You could not go into this season and say it is a failure if this team misses the playoffs. I don't think that was reasonable, given what the team was coming into the season. Now, they made that so. They traded for Cam Fowler. They fired their coach. They bring in Jim Montgomery, and then everything falls into place. So they did make the playoffs, and I suppose, technically speaking, it was reasonable aspirations for them. Next year, it's the expectation. You go in saying, if this team does not make the playoffs, it is a disappointing season. So to me, it means the retool's over. This offseason, it's about building. It's about getting to that next step, whatever that ends up meaning. Yes, you can have young players. Like, every team is going to continue to add in young players, right? That's the goal, at least. Even when the Cardinals were really good, they were adding in youthful talent into it. Like, the Cardinals were in the midst of a all-in campaign, basically, like from 2003 to 2015-ish. Think about some of the favorites for the Cardinals over that 12 to 15-year stretch. It was the Memphis Mafia guys. So, yes, they do have young players that are coming up, but I think the retool's over to me, given the expectations of next season.
Yeah, what makes it tough for me to figure out is then, like, what do we call Dvorsky? Because what you just mentioned, I agree with, teams are typically trying to add in younger pieces, but I typically view them as complementary pieces, and I don't view that as Dvorsky's role. Like, Dvorsky's role will be as a number 2 centerman when he is ready for it. But
that's probably not next year.
And that's why I have a tough time deciding, is the retool over? Because my answer to that is probably no, because of what I just said with Dvorsky. Since he is viewed as supposed to be a significant piece for what the future holds, I think I have to say the retool's not over. And I will add this too. I think it is also because there are still going to be growing pains for this team, right? Bolduc in year number 2, full season. Jimmy Snugger getting his first full season at the NHL level. Look, he was great for the, whatever it was, 10 games that he was here. I also know there's going to be growing pains. I don't know if he's going to be a consistent player for 82 games. So I think, though the expectation will be they will to be a playoff team, I still think that they will say the retool is not over just yet.
So let me, and I'm not asking you specifically this, BK. I'm asking everybody listening because I know you really weren't around this time, but did anybody believe the rebuild was over in 2008, 2009? But they made the playoffs, went on a second-half run to get in, and then they got swept in the first round. But Backus was 24, Perron was 20, Berglund was 20, TJ Oshie was 21. They didn't even draft. They didn't even think about it. I don't even know if Tarasenko and Schwartz were born at that point. They were. Where I'm getting at is 08, 09 was where people started to look at this and be like, oh, man, we might have something here. But the expectations weren't, oh, yeah, this team's going to go on a run. There were still growing pains. Now, I do remember, because I was 19 at the time, it was frustrating when they missed the playoffs in 2009 and then in 2010. But you also saw the developments, and you were like, okay, they're still missing some pieces. And then when 11 happened, and we've made the comps to 11.
I was about to say, I think this is 2012. I think that's what this is, where you have Ken Hitchcock in place. You just got through the Davis Payne experience, and you're moving on, and now you're going into the Jim Montgomery era. Yeah. To me, that's what this is. So if that's what this is, then yeah, the retool's over. It's time.
And that's where the part is. That's why I'm 50-50 on this, because I'm with you. Like, we've made the comps to this 2011-2012 season. You're not the 08-09, but you have younger players like you did in 08-09, because all of the core pieces were 2021 just getting the experience of the NHL. That's Snugger, that's Bolduc, that's Neighbors. You didn't even have Dvorsky on this team. And I know people are saying Stenberg and Lindstein aren't considered core pieces. Guys, they believe that they are because they drafted them in the first round.
Sure, but those guys, they could be core pieces for whatever that version of the Blues looks like 3 to 4 years from now. We're not close to these guys being what you're talking about. We're not close to Stenberg and Lindstein being like top 4, top 6 players on his team. Same thing is true for Dalibor Dvorsky, man. He barely got opportunities this year. Came up and it was like a game for him to be a part of this team, and it was as a third-line center, and they're like, not ready.
Yep.
If that's the case right now, I can't fully anticipate next year he's going to be ready to go for a contending team in the top 6. I'm not even sure that he's going to be ready for that role at a high level 2 years from now.
Yep.
We'll get it back into this coming up in just a little bit. Coming up next is Katie Wu, Cardinals insider for The Athletic, here on BK and Ferrario.
ESPN.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, happy to be joined via the Callier and Thompson hotline and on the YouTube stream at youtube.com/101ESPN STL by our friend, Cardinals insider for The Athletic. She is Katie Wu, joining us as she does each and every Monday here on BK and Ferrario. Katie, all around, pretty good weekend for the Cardinals this weekend against the New York Mets. They were at home, which means they're eligible to win. That is a plus. How you doing today on a Monday morning?
Yeah, big series win over the New York Mets. Very hard to sweep a doubleheader. The Cardinals do that twice in, 4 days? We joked with Ollie Marmol after the game they should just play doubleheaders at home from now on, and they'd be a first-place club. But all jokes aside, lots of things to like about Sunday's performance, a lot of good individual standouts. I had to pick 3 for my story. I could have easily chosen 6. Just a good series win over one of baseball's best teams for the local 9.
All right, so let's start with, I think, the headliner from yesterday, which is the guy that's going to go back down to the minor leagues, of course, today, because that's the way that this works.
Oh, come on.
Michael McGreevy was absolutely fantastic. He's inserted into the game, bases loaded, 1 out, finds a way to get out of that jam, and then basically finishes out the game with 5 2/3 scoreless innings, only allowing the 1 hit against a really good Mets lineup. Katie, we wanted to talk about this today here on our show, and then we're like, so what's the story? Because, yes, he was great, but what does it mean really in the bigger picture of things? So what is your answer to that question? Michael McGreevy was great yesterday, and what? What does that mean?
Oh, this is not going to be popular. People are going to get mad. Michael McGreevy was great yesterday. Once again proved he can handle the big leagues, and nothing will change about this situation. So sorry in advance. Hear me out, though. Here's what the organization is going to say. He threw 80 pitches yesterday. They brought McGreevy up for long relief, not to come into the rotation, not to make him a 1-inning, 2-inning reliever. They brought him up because they needed quality innings from their bullpen. It was absolutely dry. They told him, and him and manager Ollie Marmol and pitching coach Dusty Blake said, if we use him in long relief, he's going to finish the game. We're not going to deter his workload. We worked super hard to get him on a consistent starter schedule. He was scheduled to start for Memphis on Saturday anyway. This was a case of benefiting the big league club while not impacting long-term development, and McGreevy was the logical choice. It doesn't make things any better from a fan perspective to say, okay, he's shoved against the New York Mets. Why is he not in the rotation? That's a separate conversation, and I actually tend to agree with you. But from the organization standpoint, he did his job. He came up. He threw 80 pitches. He won't be eligible to be used for the next 4 days anyway. The Cardinals have not announced a corresponding move for Gordon Graceffa, who is coming up to serve in relief today. I don't know it. If I'm speculating, though, it would be McGreevy going back to Memphis because he was brought up specifically for this long relief role that they felt they needed over the weekend. We can have the separate conversation as to what that means long-term and what the Cardinals should do. But right now, McGreevy got called up to do his job, did exactly that, and he's most likely going back to Memphis to be that pivotal starting pitching depth. You hate the answer. I know. I'm sorry.
Katie, it feels weird to say because I'm typically the pessimistic Cardinals hater on this show, but I feel like, if anything, it gives you optimism of what the next couple of years are going to look like because you see what Michael McGreevy has as somebody who fits into this rotation. And all speaking about the season, the rotation has actually been pretty good. The problem has been the bullpen, and that's something that you just might not be able to fix this year.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. Think about it, guys. My 5 years on the Cardinals beat, they essentially have 7 starters that are major league serviceable right now in the rotation. And they've never really had that in the 5 years I've been here. So it is a good problem to have. That they finally have some options for the rotation. The problem is after those 7, we'll throw Steven Matz in there, they have virtually nobody. And the one guy that you maybe could think could do that, in Gordon Graceffa, they need him in the bullpen. So this is what we're talking about when we say pitching depth. If, God forbid, 2 of your starters go down, you have Matz come in and McGreevy come in, then you have nobody else in AAA to be a starter. I mean, you look at the Dodgers, the Brewers, they've cycled through 9-10 starting pitchers already. The reason the Cardinals were so cautious about having a semi-6-man rotation and getting everyone on a 6 days rest schedule is because they needed to ensure they could get through the month of April healthy. And Michael McGreevy, being in AAA, somehow plays into that. I do understand where they're coming from a depth perspective. I also totally understand where the fans are coming from. You had a guy who former first-round pick, lights out spring, comes up and shoves, and he's most likely going back to AAA until they need him in a youth movement year. I get why that doesn't make sense. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying here's the organization's argument for doing things their way.
Katie, rare moment here. I actually agree with their handling of this completely.
You son of a...
I know that it is incredibly unpopular, but I think it's pretty smart. I mean, you've got 5 guys right now in your rotation. What else are you going to do with them? Like, what's the plan with Miles Michaelis if not this? And he's mostly been fine outside of a really horrific start in Boston. Fetty has been underwhelming, I would say it's fair to say, so far this year. But what, are you not going to start him? You're just going to put him into the bullpen? Like, there's nothing else you can do unless you make a super aggressive early season trade, which almost never happens in Major League Baseball. So I just don't really know what the alternative is. You also have this weird situation with Matz where he's a reliever one day, a starter the next, and they're just kind of making it work on the fly. I think it's smart what they're doing with McGreevy. Give him a specific role, let him go down to AAA, give him the exact right, like, you're starting here, you got 5 days off, you're starting again. Put him into a position where he can potentially have some success this year. I'm glad they're not pigeonholing him into some, like, the Steven Matz role. I would not want McGreevy to be in that role this year. So it's rare. I actually think they're playing this right.
I think you're spot on. And I was just about to say, if you're going to have someone switch between the bullpen and the rotation and not really have a clear role, it should be Matz in this situation. And he's done a really nice job. For guys like Palante, Liberatore, if they did it to Liberatore, I would have been irate. McGreevy, that's the last thing you want to do with your starting pitching, your young starting pitching, because these are the guys that are going to benefit your club in 26, 27, and beyond, or so you hope, while Steven Matz is under contract through, the end of this year, and he's probably, most likely not a part of your future plans. So if you're going to have a hybrid role where it really hinges on team need, it should be Steven Matz. And again, he's done a wonderful job. If you're going to commit to McGreevy as a starter, he needs to be as a starter. Should that be in the big leagues right now? You can make the argument for it, but he's starting and he has a role in AAA and we will see him. It's unpopular, BK, and I see the fan argument. I get it. I really do. But I also understand where the Cardinals are coming from, looking at their organizational depth from a big picture standpoint. The rotation has, to Alex's point, been pretty good. And I know the narrative is to just DFA Michaelis. You guys know after that Boston start, he's had a 2.14 ERA in his last 4 starts, and he has not allowed a home run all season. And now that I'm saying that, when he gets tagged for one today, just let it happen. Leave me alone. But he's pitched much better. He's pitched much better. And it's not like there's a true odd man out. Yeah, Palante's been hit hard his last couple of times. So you're going to send him to AAA and jerk him around? Isn't that the exact opposite of what guys should be doing? If you're going to let the position players struggle and get through it, you should let Palante do the same thing. We will see Michael McGreevy at some point this year, ideally as a consistent starter. Right now, for what the Cardinals are doing and the roster they have and their limitations with that, this is the one that makes the best sense for everyone involved.
All right, Katie, it was a, generally speaking, successful weekend for the Cardinals against the New York Mets. We're talking to Katie Wu, Cardinals insider for The Athletic here on BK and Ferrario. I do have to ask, though, about somebody who's not having a whole lot of success right now, and that's Jordan Walker, who has had a few off days recently. They explained this to you guys pregame yesterday, that he's getting some work on pitch identification, pitch selection, trying to stay away from that low and away slider. We've been talking about this for a few years now. Katie, when you talk to people around the Cardinals, what is their viewpoint on what we have seen through the first 30 or so games from Jordan Walker this year?
I'm glad you asked that question, and I think it's important to point out that what the Cardinals are doing with his playing time right now is not dissimilar to what they've done in 24, where he took a couple of off days throughout a week just as work days. And this is very similar to what they did with him last year, to the exact same problem he was having, which was laying off the slider low and away. And we talked to Ollie Marmol about balancing runway versus results, which will be a popular topic as the Cardinals continue to hover around 500. How do you balance giving player a consistent run and playing time, but also balance the lack of results if they still happen to be missing? And in Jordan's case, offensively, they are. It's all about mindset. And Ollie pointed out to Ryan Fernandez, they kept running him out there in April, and they stopped when it became clear his mindset was defeated and he needed to go to AAA to get right because he wasn't feeling like himself. Jordan Walker is not yet there. Actually, Ollie Marmol and John Jay, the coach that he worked the most with, have been encouraged by his workload, his attitude, his mentality. These guys are designed to struggle at some point. This is the whole point of the 2025 season. When our players struggle, can they get out of it? So that he's taking off a couple of days to work on it outside of the box score, and like he's done years prior, that makes total sense. The fact that he's been able to come to the ballpark every day with a fresh mindset, with a good mentality, and he's not yet beating up on himself, that's also a sign that's encouraging. So Are we going to see Jordan Walker run out there every single day this week? Probably not, until he can continue having better results against that slider and better pitch selection, better form, better mechanics, etc. But they are going to continue to give him run in hopes that he can figure his way out of it, because his mindset shows that he's still in a spot where he can fight, and AAA is not really an option for him right now.
Katie, on the positive side, would you say that Wilson Contreras' new walk-up song has powered up his play?
Good one. Good one. Unfortunately, he might have to change that because no more blues. Sad.
BK didn't like that joke, by the way, Katie.
I just feel like the delivery could have used a little bit of work. The execution wasn't there.
Well, I stumbled over my words a little bit. Give me a break. I had double overtime last night.
It was, we were all watching that in the Cardinals clubhouse, by the way. People walked in, and right before we were about to talk to Victor Scott, the game-tying goal scored with about 6 seconds left. It really put a damper on the interview.
I was going to say, I would have said, hold on, Victor. I need a couple of minutes to assess.
He was walking with us.
I need a decompress, Victor.
Yeah, it was what a mostly fun day in St. Louis up until the very end.
Yeah, that's correct.
Understandable.
So Wilson Contreras, though, he's good again?
Powering up his play, you'd say.
Yeah, I actually forgot what we were talking about.
Me too. The delivery sucked, all right? I get it.
Wilson Contreras, much better over the last 2 weeks. That when he's on, he's hitting balls consistently to the right side. That home run, little bank shot into the bullpen was a sign that he feels as good as ever. And really, this has happened over the last 2 weeks, but you're seeing him take a tear on, especially since he was moved down to the order. And I want to talk to him because I wonder if he's seen better pitches hitting behind Nolan Arenado, where when he's hitting in front of Brendan Donovan, pitchers are going to attack him aggressively and hope that they can get to Donovan. And the results for Donnie have been great because he has, the 4th highest average in baseball right now. I wonder if Contreras is being pitched to differently in the bottom of the order, or if he's just figured it out because he is, a very high caliber major league hitter. But this offense looks so much better with Contreras contributing, and you're looking for another right-handed bat to accompany him. Ivan Herrera could be back as soon as the start of the road trip on Friday. That will really help. But no, definitely much better from Contreras. And one thing we talked a lot about mindset, he was as cool and calm as he could be for a player in a pretty grueling slump. He even lauded himself. He's like, I haven't broken anything yet. And trust me, that's a big accomplishment for Wilson Contreras. So I really like what we're seeing out of him. I think the lineup is always going to be a little bit consistent. The offense is going to be a little inconsistent, but not to the point where it's glaring. Starting pitching's been good. It's just the bullpen. But I really liked what we saw from Jojo Romero in Game 1 yesterday. That was big-time Jojo. That was good to see.
Yeah, they need that in a really bad way. All right, Katie, we'll get you out of here on this. You mentioned the Ivan Herrera injury. They mentioned over the weekend that he had a little bit of a setback. He was sore, but they're not worried about it. That always makes me worried when I hear that from the Cardinals, but we'll see on that. What is the outlook right now for Ivan Herrera, and is there any concern internally about Mason Wynn and the ankle issue that he came up with yesterday?
Yeah, we'll touch on Mason first because that was pretty standard. He played for an inning after tripping over third base. That was a crazy play, but as soon as he tripped, he was in grimacing clear pain. The fact that he's able to play through it makes me feel like it's not super major, but I'm no doctor. Ollie Marmol said after the game on Sunday he's day-to-day. I have not yet seen a roster move, so outside of Graceffo. That doesn't mean it's not happening, but hopefully give him a couple days, he can right back out there. For Herrera, the goal is for him to catch back-to-back days because when he comes back to the Cardinals, he will resume their primary catching role. Pedro Paz has done a very nice job filling in, but the Cardinals made it pretty clear coming out of spring training that Herrera was going to see most of the bulk of the reps behind the plate. So he needs to be able to catch back-to-back days before they think about activating him. Some soreness, not what you want. Haven't had an update on him since yesterday. Memphis is off today. The minor leagues don't play on Monday. So maybe that day of rest will help. That's why the Cardinals are targeting best-case scenario, a Friday return against the Nationals. But we'll certainly keep you posted in case that soreness turns into something more major.
This changes depending on how he feels and everything, and certainly what happens this week. Do you think they keep 3 catchers when Ivan Herrera returns?
I don't think so.
Okay.
They already have 20 DHs on their roster.
Sure.
Pozo's he can swing it, and he's fun to watch. He's done a real nice job filling in, but his job for this team was always to be emergency catcher depth, and he's done a nice job at that. I would like to see Baker get a little bit more reps, and I think that's the case that they go with. But we will see. You're right. It does depend on how Ivan is feeling and what the team needs at the time.
All right. She's Katie Wu. Find her great work, including her 3 takeaways from the weekend over at The Athletic. You can follow her on Twitter, as always, at Katie J. Wu. And she joins us each and every Monday here on BK and Ferrario. Katie, appreciate the time, as always. We'll talk with you again next week.
You got it, guys. See you later.
See you, Katie.
That's Katie Wu joining us as she does each and every Monday on BK and Ferrario here on the show. Alex, when you think about Jordan Walker and the struggles that he's going through, I know there was a lot of positive that came from that conversation. Michael McGreevy was amazing yesterday. The rotation has mostly been pretty solid. There were some moments yesterday with Jojo Romero specifically. T-Bone, I know you mentioned that before our show today. He looked great as well. It's there was mostly positives from this weekend, but so much of this season is tied to what does Jordan Walker become, and so far those returns are not positive. It's been a hugely disappointing start to the season for him. He's batting 198 with basically no power. What do you make of what we're seeing from him right now, and frankly the lack of playing time lately? I don't blame them for this. I think it's pretty smart what they're doing, but what do you make of all of this?
I mean, the lack of playing time is partially frustrating, but I also look at it as, well, they're working with him away from the field, and it needs to happen.
Yeah.
I'm fine with all of this, man. These are the growing pains that you needed to find out. You've done the last 2 years where he's had bad stretches, and they resort to, we'll send him to Memphis. Now it's not sending him to Memphis. Now it's figure your ish out at the major league level. I'm glad that they're giving him some days off. I think it's a smart decision by Ollie to say, hey, go work on the problems that you have at the plate, but you're not going to get the safety blanket of going down to Memphis and work on your stuff there, because you've got to figure out at the major league level. And by the end of the season, if the narrative is still, well, Jordan Walker wasn't able to adapt, he didn't figure it out, cool. Then guess what? Mission accomplished, Cardinals, because you did the job that you needed to do, and you backed up what you told the fans.
It's been kind of clunky in terms of the way that it's happened, where 1 week they're all in on Nolan Gorman's development, the next week they're all in on Alec Burleson's development, and then suddenly Jordan Walker's not in there. So, it can feel day to day as though you're man, they're just kind of meandering around trying to find answers at any of these given positions. But I think they've been pretty smart with the way that they've handled most of these guys. I mean, you get into the season and Victor Scott earned his opportunity. And so that means somebody has to be the odd man out. That somebody was Nolan Gorman based on performance. And then as Alec Burleson went through his struggles, they work behind the scenes with Burleson, and that means Nolan Gorman gets more of an opportunity. And now as you're seeing Jordan Walker is the guy that's really going through his struggles, well, Burleson once again reemerges as a guy that's played in 5 of the last 6 games. The only game that he missed was the one that they went up against a lefty starter. So it's worked out pretty well, all things considered. I do want to see what comes on the other side of this, though. They can work through some stuff right now, but eventually you'd really like to see some positive returns from Walker, just some production. It just hasn't really been there so far. So it's frustrating. It's really disappointing. But I think, process-wise, I think they've done pretty well with the way they've handled all of this stuff, because it could have gotten ugly. It could have been 2023 all over again, and it hasn't been that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think they've done a pretty good job of handling it. I mean, I look at Walker now getting the rest and the work days as what we were talking about with Dvorsky next year, where there's going to be days where he sits in the press box, right? You use it as learning days. I still think it's better to learn while you're playing, but I can understand the argument of, hey, let's just work on this. I am worried about him moving forward, because you're right. I think you want to start to see some production. I do like that they will keep him here, but I do worry, because I feel like, and I'd love to ask Ollie this next time I'm down at the ballpark, I feel like a batter's eye is the hardest thing to try and fix, right? It's one thing if it's a swing mechanic, but right now it's pitch recognition, and that is a very difficult thing to adjust to. And as we've seen for 3 years, it's been the same pitch that's been his problem.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, if you missed any of our conversation with Katie Wu, be sure to check it out on the podcast page after the show today. 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you can go to find it. It is sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
Coming up next, we get back to the Blues. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service tax line. You can check out the mic drop feature on the 101 ESPN app as well. We've had a lot of those come in. We want to hear from more of you. What is the Blues' greatest strength going into the offseason? Where would you say they are the best right now? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. Why should you hire America's largest injury law firm for your case? There's lots of reasons. Just like there's a reason millions of people called us last year in their time of need. When it comes to fighting for justice and compensation, millions of people across the country trust us to go to battle for them. We became the largest injury law firm in the world for a reason. There's only one Morgan & Morgan, forthepeople.com. Injured? Dial #law or visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
I geek over breakfast. Lunch and dinner are all right, but the first meal of the day is all I need to wake up on the right side of the bed and get to it. That's why I gotta shout out McDonald's for their 2 for $4.89 deal. Right now, I can choose between the sausage McMuffin with egg, a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, or the sausage, egg, and cheese bagel. 2 for just $4.89. So if you like to geek over breakfast like me, start your day with Mickey D's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Woods, the all things basement tea experts, have helped homeowners dry up wet basements and crawl spaces and repaired cracked ceiling foundations since 1986. Now we level uneven concrete with Polylevel. It's so much better than mudjacking. I'm Dave, and I work for Woods, and we leveled my front porch 8.5 inches 9.5 years ago. If we can raise a highway slab, we can raise your driveway slab too, or porch, or patio. Get a free estimate at woodsbasementsystems.com or call 800-388-9326 or online at woodsbasementsystems.com.
Is your outdated AC unit chugging along like your old VHS player, leaving you feeling stuck in a time warp? Whoa! It's time to step into the future with a new energy-efficient system from Air Alliance Team. Right now, get 0% financing for 60 months. That's 5 years of cool comfort with no interest. With expert service, affordable prices, and a guarantee that keeps you chill all summer long, request your appointment now at airallianceteam.com. Air Alliance Team, getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.
Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, St. Louis Blues fell to the Winnipeg Jets 4-3 in double overtime as they lose the series to the Jets in 7 games. They will have their end-of-season pressers tomorrow, and we will be at Enterprise Center for the show tomorrow. And the Cardinals will be starting up a series with the Pittsburgh Pirates tonight after taking 2 of 3 from the New York Mets over the weekend. It'll be a 6:45 start tonight as Miles Michaelis will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Center is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. CMalondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here at 101 ESPN. So what's the Blues' greatest strength going into the offseason? I think there are a number of different directions that you could take this. Alex, a lot of people on the text line at 314-399-9646 have said the greatest strength for the Blues is their coaching. I think there is some truth to that. Jim Montgomery has proven he is a more than capable coach, and you could put him in the top 5 coaches in the NHL, and I wouldn't bat an eye at that. So I think that is a totally fair thing to throw into this discussion. For you, what do you believe is their greatest strength, Alex?
I think it's goaltending, but tied for first to me would be their defensemen, specifically the top portion of their defense, because I know a lot of the snooty people right now are going to respond with, they got Justin Falk on their team still. Fine. But Parayko, Fowler, Broberg, I mean, I don't know how many teams have a better top 3 defensemen than what those 3 have showcased this season for you. And I mean, you're talking a guy who's not even 25 years old yet in Philip Broberg, Parayko, who's still in the prime of his career, and Fowler, who you're seeing take the next level. But just defense as a whole for the Blues. We're talking about Tyler Tucker, who a lot of people thought that when he was injured was going to be the turning point of the series, and I can hear the argument for that. Justin Falk, whether you like him or not, had a very good postseason for the Blues. He had moments that were not good, but overall, he was a good piece to have in that playoff format for you, and Nick Leddy was a good third-pair defenseman. You're still missing something, but if you look at the defensemen as a group, they scored the most points in the playoffs of any team in the first round. You had one guy who was the only defenseman in the postseason who was not on the ice for an even-strength goal against. And you've got one that, in my opinion, would be in the Norris Trophy conversation of Parayko if he didn't get injured, and Cam Fowler's going to have a full season for you. So, to me, I think coaching is a really good one. Goaltending seems to be the cop-out answer because it always is your strength. But I think defense is a massive weapon for this team going into next season.
T-Bone, for you, what would you say is their biggest strength right now going into the offseason?
I think I would agree with their defensemen. I think your top 3 are now getting to the point where Doug Armstrong wanted them to be when they signed and acquired Falk and Torrey Krug. Because remember, he wanted to go, hey, this is the way the league is going, puck-moving defensemen. And what he got wrong at that point was, oh, they're a little undersized. Now he's got guys like Philip Broberg. He's got Cam Fowler. He's got Colton Parayko. I would throw another one up there for me is they have got depth of scoring once again. Can I
build on that real quick?
Yeah.
Because I think that, to me, and I'm looking like overall, not even just depth of scoring, but overall the roster, this is a theory that I have, Alex. I don't know if it's going to pay off, but I think it's a theory at least.
Oh, Professor BK.
I like theories.
I think professional sports right now are moving toward an era of your weakest link is really the best way to be able to tell whether or not your roster is competitive to the point of being a championship contender. Like, you look at the NBA, right? The Boston Celtics last year, one of the reasons why they were able to win the title was not just because, Jason Tatum was great. They had this really good postseason from their stars. It was because every player they put on the court at any given time, they went like 10 deep, and all of them were above average. Every single player that they put out there. They never had a moment in a game where they had a guy that was a clear flaw, a clear weakness on the court. The Oklahoma City Thunder are that team this year. They don't have a single guy that they put on the floor that you're like, man, that guy's a liability. Meanwhile, for most of the other teams across the league, they are at any given time going to have at least one player where you look at it and you say to yourself, man, that's the weakness, and the other team goes at it like crazy. For the Lakers, it's crazy to say, Luka Doncic was their weakness defensively. People were exposing it like crazy in that first-round series against the Timberwolves. So all you had to do, if you're the other coach, is say, hey, go at him. Get the mismatch and get him switched on to whoever we want to have the ball at any given time, whoever we want to score, just go at him because we're going to beat him. That guy can't move right now. So I think the same thing is happening to a degree in hockey. You look at the teams that are winning at any kind of like meaningful level, dude, they don't have huge glaring weaknesses. Look at the Panthers in recent seasons. They're amazing from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. Their biggest strength, yes, they have the stars, don't get me wrong. Who's the guy that they're throwing over the boards that you're like, that guy when he's out on the ice, whoo, boy, you better watch out. I actually think the Blues are pretty good in that scenario. Like, you look at their team, the one spot that you would say was a weakness this year was third line left winger. Mm-hmm. They didn't really have a guy that they felt comfortable with. But when they're fully healthy, that guy's not in the lineup. Mm-hmm. Because you're just dropping down probably Jake Neighbors, Snuggard, whoever, and you have Dylan Holloway that's plugging that spot in your lineup. I think the Blues' overall depth is probably their biggest strength right now. They just have very few players that they're putting onto the ice at any given time that you don't feel comfortable with when they're out there.
Yeah. Go ahead, T-Bone.
The counter that I would have, and I don't necessarily totally disagree with that, but I think the problem that you see is what you just said with that left wing spot on that third line, which is when you do build this way at the NHL, I don't know if it really happens in the NBA, but in the NHL for sure, is though it is, hey, we want as much depth as possible, but the problem is when you lose one piece, everything really goes haywire. And that's what you saw with the St. Louis Blues with the Dylan Holloway injury. Because you're right, when Holloway was healthy, we're not even talking about that left wing spot on that third line of the rotating door of Joseph and Texier. You have somebody bumped down onto that line. Probably Jake Neighbors is bumped down to that line while Holloway's with Shannon Kyrou. It is just a little bit more fragile, in my opinion. Unlike when you say, oh, we have a superstar. Well, a superstar can carry guys on his back and get you through a playoff series, through the regular season. Look at what Connor McDavid just did for the Edmonton Oilers. I thought they were done. They switched goalies. They were down 2-0 and all of a sudden they win that series in 6 games.
But the thing is, I don't think that can consistently win in the playoffs. Like, I think that won in their first round. I don't think that that's going to get them to the Western Conference Finals or certainly the Stanley Cup.
It's not going to win you a Stanley Cup. Like Edmonton
I don't know because Edmonton got there last year,
but
and I think they can do it again this year.
They were exposed last year in terms of
It's hard to say
depth.
you're exposed when you're in the Stanley Cup.
I thought last year's team was a better team.
Well,
I thought Edmonton was just better last year. They were deeper last year, and part of that is because of the guys that are now on the Blues.
Yeah.
That was a big part of what they did last year was the depth.
But also Edmonton felt like that was... I mean, they used Stuart Skinner last year, who was great. Now, look, Stuart Skinner's not even starting for them. So, like, I mean, it goes quick. I mean, I hear what you're saying because pack mentality, we've talked a lot about it. Like, it is the most difficult way to build. And when you lose a piece, how do you survive off of that? But that's where the pack mentality has to be strong. You've got to have that depth of scoring. And it's to what we were talking about. Frankly, this series went away because you lost that third line that was able to rotate for you. And, yes, if you lose one guy, that's problematic. But I would also point to that, well, they were relying on Oscar Sundqvist to take that next step. And, of course, we all believe Sundqvist's best years are behind him. And Bolduc was still a rookie learning in this situation. So I was just going to say, do you ask that same question 2 years from now when Bolduc has developed a little bit more and you can look at him as a third weapon to use?
One quick follow-up for you guys on this. Now, you can never expect your team to be fully healthy in the playoffs. It's a faulty way to build, and like it's just not. You're never going to be fully healthy at this time of the year, right? If Dylan Holloway was healthy, I think the Blues win that series against Winnipeg.
Are the Jets healthy?
Fair question. Fair follow-up.
I mean,
both teams fully healthy. Based on what I saw in that series, I think the Blues win it.
Yeah,
I know
do
that
too.
may sound totally crazy to people. I did not feel that way going in. Having watched the series and seen those two teams, I think the Blues win that series if the Blues are at full health and the Jets are at full health. So to answer your question, T-Bone, I personally believe yes. I think that is a more than fair thing to ask, and I also understand if somebody would say Winnipeg. The reason I ask it, if the Blues were at full health now and did advance, are you sure they're not going to the Cup this year? I know that sounds insane. I know, but it's why I think like this style of build, it is really fragile. It's super risky. We just watched it because you lose one guy, you pull him out of the lineup, and you lose a line. The ceiling on it is really high.
Yeah, well, and that's why I really think, like, if you're Doug Armstrong and you're looking at this moving forward, you're looking at it and saying, where's the missing link? Because that's typically what takes a team from being in the contending or in the what do we talk about the
winning window.
Yeah, the winning window. Like that's what puts you in that winning window
versus winning.
Yeah, like that's what the Florida Panthers did when they got Matthew Tkachuk. They were in the competitive window and they said, no, let's make this better. That's the step you take when you feel like you get there. But before you get there, you do have to get some battle scars on your team. And that's what this postseason felt like, on top of getting more and more opportunities for guys like Snuggerud and Bolduc and Dylan Holloway and things that.
T-Bone Alex thinks his team's going to win the Cup every year, so I'm not surprised that he would be more on my side. You're much more like, I would say reasonable, rational, realistic with this. And typically we're in line on these things. I think I fell for the team by the end of this season, though. So am I seeing this through blues-colored glasses in your mind?
Not necessarily. I think what gets difficult is everybody's healthy in the Western Conference. I don't think they get there. Right? I can hear the argument that they beat the Jets because they looked fragile. They seemed kind of they seemed antsy at times throughout the series, especially Scott O'Neill burning a timeout like 9 minutes into Game 6. Like, what the hell was that?
Dude,
but I can hear the argument they would get through the Jets. I think if the rest of the Western Conference is healthy, I'm not sure that they do, because I think the star power of the Avalanche, though they lost in the first round,
the stars at full health too.
Because
Yeah.
I'm on the side of I think star power will beat depth of scoring.
But see, that's where the goaltender comes into play. In any other team, I would agree with you, but Jordan Binnington steals series, and we saw him do that in this series. Your team just couldn't get that extra push.
It's why they're in such a fascinating position right now to me. Like, you can make the argument that the Blues are right there, man. They are right there at the cusp of really entering a true winning window where, like, dude, throw out all the rational discussions. Like, you could be really close to being a legit contender for a cup sooner rather than later. They're also really close to reverting back to missing the playoffs next year. That's also in their range of outcomes is next season. Hey, what if Shin goes back to what he was prior to Dylan Holloway expanding what we saw from him? What if Justin Falk reverts back to what he was a year ago?
Sundqvist can't play.
Exactly. Or Dvorsky gets that opportunity on the third line. Sonny is on the fourth line, and Dvorsky's just not ready for that opportunity.
Or you lose
yet.
that fourth line. I mean, like, that's the threat of no Foxa.
Yeah, Kyrou takes a step back defensively next year, right? Like, that hit changes things for him. He's not as competitive, whatever. Like, all of this stuff also in the range of outcomes. You can't see the upside without also acknowledging the downside. They're in a fascinating spot.
It's why, and you can't do it, but put the Blues in the same spot that the Florida Panthers. Like, put this team 2 years ago where the Florida Panthers were, and do they go aggressive and go after Matthew Tkachuk? And that's the teetering spot that you're in right now. I just said a little bit ago, don't do what Rob Blake did and go out there and get the wrong guy. But if the right guy is there that you believe changes the dynamic of your team, yeah, you might need to be aggressive and say, cool, this was fun. Now let's push it even further.
And as we get into the offseason, we could talk about who some of those guys might be for the team.
We'll talk
Ferrario
more
5 about the Blues coming up in 10 minutes or so. I want to hear from you. The mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. What are your thoughts coming off of yesterday's just absolute gut punch of a loss for the Blues in Game 7 against the Jets? But coming up next, it's the Junk Drawer here on BK and Ferrario. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So Alex mentioned something off air that I wanted to bring on air.
You can't say that on air.
Alex, you were talking about you and your wife are watching a TV show. It's called Adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
It is very good. I highly recommend it. It's on Netflix for any of you that are looking for something to watch potentially with the wife or the husband. It's a hard watch, though. And if you have kids,
very
it's
intense.
gut-wrenching. It is also a UK show.
Mm-hmm.
So there are accents. So you mentioned you got to watch it with subtitles.
Dude.
Is that something that you always do, or is that just this show brought that out?
No, it's something that I dread doing, but I couldn't understand. I watched the first episode without subtitles, and no disrespect, but I could not understand their dialect. I'm like, what are they talking about? And so I had to rewatch it with subtitles, and I hate it because I'm not even watching the show. I'm staring at the words, so I have no idea what's taking place. I'm reading. And so I feel like I have to go back and rewatch the whole damn thing that I got the subtitles on, and now I got to find out what the actual plot took place was. I hate everything about it, and I refuse to do it, but that was a show I had to.
I am the opposite. And
you're a psychopath.
Sometimes your perspective can be blinded by what you do is the thing that everybody does. I assumed a lot of people watched shows or movies with subtitles on. I do not watch sports that way, but if I'm watching something on Netflix, HBO, whatever, I will almost always watch it with the subtitles as part of it. White Lotus, show that I just watched recently. I feel like I need the subtitles for that as well. It just helps me follow along a little bit, right? It keeps me engaged so I don't just start looking at my phone or something too. I put this out on Twitter, twitter.com/BK Sports Talk. Do you consistently watch TV shows or movies with subtitles? I have been heartened by the response. Because I thought maybe I was the outlier here.
I don't care what the response is. You're a psychopath.
53% of people say, yes, they do indeed watch TV shows or movies with subtitles consistently.
This has got to be like 13 votes so far.
We're up to 70 votes thus far.
Give it time.
I don't understand this at all. I really don't. Why would you want to watch something that you have to read? Like the whole point of watching
that's why I hate books.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. But the whole point of watching something is to feel like you're in it, right? Like to kind of drown out and watch it. And the entire time I'm watching this, I'm reading what they're saying. So I have no idea. And the whole thing with this film is it's one camera shot. Like you're watching how they do. I can't even pay attention.
The show is it is a unique shooting experience.
Well done.
It's one of the best shows that I've watched in a really long time. It might be up there among, I don't know about my favorite because, man, is it a hard watch. But the best, it's right up there.
It's impossible for me to do it, and I hate it so much. So I personally think of the 57 people that voted, and 53% of you thought that, yeah, you do subtitles, you are also psychopaths.
We're at 85, still 52%.
I can't believe that.
Get your votes in. T-Bone, you're very much anti-subtitles as well?
Absolutely. Okay. I'm with Alex. I get distracted because I keep saying, okay, I'm not going to read, and then I start reading, and I go, I don't know what just happened.
I'm reading along as it goes.
And
I don't know, maybe it's just the way that my brain operates. I feel as though I can read and watch at the same time.
No, I can't do that.
I don't know.
I think that's a myth.
I can't walk and chew bubble gum then if that's the case because I'm not able to do that.
I just want to point out, behind the scenes here, there's times where BK is typing on his computer and I can say something to him and he doesn't.
No
so
chance.
You can't type and listen. There's no way you're reading and watching.
So that's when I'm locked in, though, on something that I'm doing. I don't know what it is, but this is a different experience. I can have the viewing and reading experience
I feel vindicated on our Air Comfort Service text line because a ton of texts are coming in saying, let me go vote so we could get that number down. It's insane, dude. No way. Like, I can understand probably people that are clicking on yes because there are some times that Katie and I are trying to watch something and the girls are screaming, and so you put the subtitles on because you just are trying to understand what's taking place. But when it's her and I, when we're sitting down to just spend time together and watch, if she has the subtitles on, I will turn them off immediately.
From Vazini over on the text line, putting subtitles on to watch a movie is the equivalent to going to a restaurant and having the waiter chew your food for you and bird feed it to you. It is considered to me to be the ultimate in laziness.
Oh, you a baby bird there, BK?
I don't think that it is lazy at all.
I don't think that's close to.
I actually don't think you understand what laziness means, too. It's actually more work to read.
It requires more of your work. Yeah, it requires more of your attention to watch with the subtitles. I'm not telling you that you should do it, but for me, it works. For me and my wife, we both prefer that.
Yep. Nope. Can't do it, man. Cannot do it.
Exactly 50-50. So we are.
There we go, text line. Get in there and put it down.
100 votes in. It is exactly 50-50 on either side. If you want to get your votes in, BK Sports Talk on Twitter is the place where you can go to do so.
But said this is just a strange thing to be mad about. Well, welcome to Alex for the next 3 months because I don't have hockey, so I'm going to get mad about other things.
All right, coming up in 15 minutes, we will discuss the Cardinals briefly, but we're going to do so with the backdrop of the St. Louis Blues. Are the Cardinals where the Blues were at this point in the season? We'll talk about them in 15 minutes. But next, how do the Blues stack up against the other teams that we've seen thus far in the Western Conference? And how did you feel last night as that last goal went in for the Winnipeg Jets? We'll get your thoughts on that via the mic drop feature here on BK and Ferrario. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So how did the Blues team stack up against others that we have seen so far in the Western Conference? We obviously saw how they were against Winnipeg. But Alex, as you were watching the other series as well, and we want to hear from you, the Mic Drop features on the 101 ESPN app. What are your thoughts on the Blues as we get to the end of this first round? Blues lose 4-3 in the 7-game series against the Jets. You watched the Stars versus the Avs series, which was spectacular. Saturday night was an unbelievable finish in that one. And then the Pacific Divisions with the Knights versus the Wild and the Oilers taking down the LA Kings. How did you feel like the Blues stacked up against the other Western Conference playoff teams, Alex?
I think if the Blues were in any of those other series, and this is going to sound so homer of me, but you probably expected this, I think the Blues win any of the other series if they were a part of it.
Wow.
This truly, and Radek Fox has said this, he told Grant that this was the most physical series he has ever played in. And mind you, this guy has played only in the Central Division in his entire career. And it's the toughest division in hockey. Pete DeBoer said it after the Stars and Colorado Avalanche Game 7. But I go back and look at the other 3 series in the Western Conference. To me, I think the Blues beat Vegas in 6 games. I think Vegas clawed back into that series because Philip Gustafsson did not make the proper saves that he needed to. I watch Edmonton and LA. LA was up 2-0 in that series. The only reason Edmonton got back into that series was because Darcy Kemper was not making the saves for them, because Edmonton went on to put up 6 goals. Now, I understand to T-Bone's point, Connor McDavid went McJesus mode on everybody, and he showcased why he's the best player in the game. But I think Jordan Binnington has found ways to keep games competitive against the Edmonton Oilers. And then the other one, you're talking about Colorado versus Dallas. That one would have been a tough series because you're taking on star power versus depth. But I looked at the star power and I think back to Jordan Binnington, and we've seen him just get the best of Colorado every single time they play. And Dallas, Dallas was a Mikko Rantanen God mode away from getting bounced in the first round. So I think some of those series would have gone 7. But watching every one of those, none of those series were as physical as how the Blues played against the Winnipeg Jets. And the Winnipeg Jets pushed back. I don't know how many of those other teams were capable of pushing back like the Blues did. So I think their goaltender, plus how physical they played, would have given them the advantage in all of those series.
You ready for the worst take in the history of sports radio? I have no idea how they would stack up.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll be back after this.
I don't know. And the reason why is because I really don't know what to make of the Jets. They were really hurt in this series. It started out with Ehlers and Velarde being out, and that totally changes their power play, and we saw that in action, right? The first few games of the series, I was like, man, if you could keep this game on special teams, Blues are in a really good spot because the Jets were doing nothing on the power play. Penalty kill wasn't working out so well for them. And then the Jets became a totally different team on the road. And then you have the situation where Scheifele gets hurt, but Velarde's back. And then Ehlers eventually comes back in the series as well. But then Morrissey gets hurt in Game 7. So they were just a very banged up team. Some of that is a byproduct of the way that the Blues play. I understand that. It's part of what I think is so compelling about the Jets versus Stars series, if I am a Blues fan watching this from the outside looking in. What's real about what we just saw? Because right now, I could totally understand your perspective on this, Alex. Blues pushed the President Trophy team to the brink. I mean, they had them on the ropes to the point where they were going home. It was done until there were 2 seconds remaining and they were able to tie this thing up. It's like you had it there for the taking. And you did impose a lot of that physical punishment that you're talking about that led to Morrissey getting hurt, that led to Scheifele getting hurt and not being able to play in the last couple of games of the series. You did that. But I just don't know how the Jets stack up against some of these other teams. The Jets don't have the star power of the Stars, of the Golden Knights, or of the Oilers. So would that have been a bigger problem for the Blues than going up against a team that is similarly situated to you, or they are built on the depth of scoring? I don't know, but man, I can't wait to find out what the Jets do against the Stars, because I think it could help give us a glimpse into, were the Blues as close as we thought they were? Are they closer than we thought they were? Or was that all fool's gold, and it was a reflection of actually the Jets just aren't a team that's built for this time of the year?
Well, and I don't think the Jets stack up well against Dallas. I think they're going to get beaten 5 games, but it's not because their players don't stack up well. It's because they don't have the goaltending. Like if Winnipeg loses in 5 games against Dallas, it's going to be because their goaltender was not good. Because their goaltender was not good in this series. How many times in a postseason have you been able to walk away from a series where the losing team's goaltender was the better than the winning team's goaltender? Because that's what took place in this series between the Blues and Jets. It's why it's infuriating. Because the Blues deserved to win. Because Binnington was better. So even if Winnipeg gets swept, if they get bounced in 5 games, you're not going to be talking about, oh, well, see, the Blues didn't stack up well. No, you're going to be talking about, man, Binnington would have been able to make those saves against Dallas. And that's where the difference was in this. And it's why somebody texted in and said physicality doesn't win playoff games. No, physicality does win playoff games because the Blues did their job. They banged the Winnipeg Jets around. Mark Scheifele was gone. Josh Morrissey was gone. Logan Stanley was in and out of the lineup. Nikolai Ehlers was working on fumes at the end of that series last night. They did their job. They just could not stop Winnipeg's push at 6-on-5. And that's the difference in this series to me. And maybe that would have blown up on you in the Dallas Stars series, but you win postseason by goaltending. And to me, watching all of those games, the Blues had the best goaltender of any team in the Western Conference.
I think you win series by being elite at something. You can be elite at goaltending. I think the Oilers are pretty damn close. And they were definitely not elite in their goaltending, but they had elite goal scorers. So you can make do with that. The Colorado Avalanche, right? They did not have elite goaltending with Darcy Kemper in net, but they had elite skaters in front of him that built a unbelievable offense, especially when it came to their power play, whether that was Rantanen or McCarr or McKinnon. Like, those guys were just superstar talents, and they found a way to get it done. So I think you just have to be elite somewhere. And the Blues, for them, that way is with what they have in net. And Jordan Binnington, to me, one of the biggest takeaways from this series, and we had talked about it during the series, but certainly coming away from it, dude, he re-upped his status as a big game goalie. It had been a while since we'd really seen him in this kind of a series. 22, we saw it briefly before he got hurt. 2019, we saw it to a crazy degree. Bubble series, wasn't necessarily there to the same degree. I don't think he necessarily lived up to those expectations, but this year it was back. Totally back against Winnipeg, and especially at home, Game 7, he was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, once again, and Joey has said this a lot, I've said it a lot, if you gave me every goaltender in the league today and said pick one that is going to win you a Stanley Cup, it would be Jordan Binnington. I mean,
he'd be number 1 on your list.
He'd be number 1 on my list. I don't know of another goalie that I'd be more confident in that type of scenario. Like, I understand it says 4 goals that were scored on him last night, and I know some people are going to reference that. Those people didn't watch that game.
Oh, yeah.
Because every goal that beat him was a tipped goal. Every goal that beat him was the Blues just not doing their job in front of the net. And to me, that's what wins series. Like, yes, you're right. You can be elite in every area, but Connor McDavid was elite, and they didn't beat Florida in 7 games because the goaltender made the final save.
Let's stick with the Blues. I want to hear from you guys. Mic drop feature is on the 101 ESPN app. If you guys want to get those in, do so right now. Scott Lee Heating mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. How do you guys feel like the Blues stack up against the West, and what was your biggest takeaway from this series coming to an abrupt end last night, the Blues season coming to an abrupt end last night? We'll give you our final thoughts on that before we get to the Cardinals coming up in 15 minutes here on BK and Ferrario. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Let's get to some of your mic drops. We've been talking for a long time today here on BK and Ferrario, giving you our thoughts on what took place in Game 7, what it means for the Blues, where things stand for them, how they compare to the rest of the Western Conference. So we want to hear from you. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. The mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. I'm making T-Bone very upset today because we keep pushing back our Cardinal segments. Eventually, maybe we'll talk about them, maybe not.
No, you can get to them later on in the week.
But right now, it is time to hear from you. Let's go out to the mic drop feature and hear from Mike.
We will have a whole offseason to talk about the excitement, the direction forward. It hurts too much today. And it hurts even more because you were playing with house money. The pressure was on Winnipeg. If you advance to the next round, it was on Dallas and only going forward. And you don't have that luxury anymore. The pressure only gets bigger now. This just feels like a missed opportunity.
I mean, he's right, but let's say they get to the playoffs next year and they're the second wild card team again. Is the pressure going to be on the Blues next year, or is the pressure going to be on the team that's in first place or the team that's in second place? Like, the Blues will not be viewed as a cup contender next year. I can tell you there's at least 6 teams in the Western Conference that will be viewed a cup contender next year. The Blues will be one of those teams that say, oh, they could be sneaky good. And yeah, sneaky good is a little pressure. But it's not the same pressure that they had in 2019 where they went into the season and said that is a cup contender. In my opinion, they're going to go into next year being the 4th best team in the West or in the Central Division, 5th best team in the Central Division. People are still going to have Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado above them. Minnesota's going to be above them because they got a ton of cap space.
Where you were this year.
Yeah. And then you get into the whole Utah or Nashville. And I'm sure there's going to be dummies out there that says, well, Nashville's going to have a bounce back. Or Utah, look at how good they are. But I don't agree that now all of the pressure's on them. Yeah, the pressure from the city is going to be, hey, don't miss the playoffs. The front office is going to be, don't miss the playoffs. But if you think those guys are just going to crumble under the pressure after what they've just done, I don't see that happening.
I think the pressure will be on them next year.
I agree.
I think that this is a team that now things change because the expectations are now not just from the front office, but from everybody on the outside. Hey, we're going to be evaluating things on a day-to-day basis as if you're trying to win every single game. And that changes the way that the team is discussed because you remember, Alex, at the beginning of this past season, this year, that we just got through, it was, okay, is this about development? Is it about winning right now? And then consistently, I remember when you came on the air, Alex, and you said, hey, everything I'm hearing from the team is that they expect to make the playoffs this year. And me and T-Bone almost laughed.
You did. I was a little hurt that night.
How can they possibly view this team as a playoff contender? It's not. This is a retool season. They have admitted as much publicly. Like, yes, the offer sheets expedite things, but it's crazy to think that they expedited it that much. But then they fired their coach. They bring in Cam Fowler, and everything goes the way that it ended up going. Now you go into next year. The expectation will be that they are a playoff team. The expectation will be that they are in a winning, contending window. So I do think there is pressure. I don't think this is a team that's going to wilt from that. We saw them down the stretch. They won 12 games in a row when their backs were up against the wall right after the deadline when they thought their captain might get traded. So I don't think they're going to wilt under that. They were just down at home going into a Game 6, must-win game, won it. Not just won it, blew them out of the water against Winnipeg. Then went on the road at Winnipeg for a Game 7 and dominated for about 50 minutes. And then, unfortunately, down the stretch.
Every game on the road in Winnipeg was a 1-goal loss.
I don't think this team is mentally weak.
No.
At least this team that we just watched was not.
No.
We'll see if next year they're able to back
the
up.
whole reason that I don't believe that they will wilt under that pressure starts at the coach.
All right, let's hear from Courtney.
Look, I know that people are going to say, well, it was a good season. They shouldn't have been there anyway. You know, they started off bad. I don't care about none of that. No one cares about what happened 2 months ago. That it doesn't matter. All that matters is with all they went through, changing coaches, bringing in Jim Montgomery, going on a 12-game win streak, putting yourself in position to make the playoffs, all the way down to the very last game of the season, only to collapse 2 minutes left in Game 7 with a 2-goal lead. I don't know how you can come back from that.
Let me ask this question.
Watch your tone.
No, he needs to watch his tone. First of all, Courtney.
Hey, you started with tone with the dummies in Nashville.
First of all, Courtney took me on a ride because he was going one way, and then I thought he was going to be like, but let's take the whole, this was a good season, and then just veered off and ran right into a wall. If they would have gotten blown out 6-0 last night, what would we be saying? Would we be saying the same thing, that they collapsed down the stretch? That everything was right in front of them and they just collapsed?
I think something about the way they lost. Something about the last 5 seconds, giving up the game-tying goal, it being 6-on-5 specifically, that it was an issue for them all season long. Like, that hurts in a way, and
it's like
there's no recovering from that.
No, there's not, but it's like 2 seconds took this team from being a Stanley Cup contender to being a team that was crazy to get here. Again, 5 games ago, we were talking about, well, you know what? The series didn't go well for you. You've played good, but it just isn't in the cards. And now we're going to walk away and say it was a great season. But because of a 2-second collapse, we're going to act as if this team was going to win the Stanley Cup this year.
I do think, to be fair to some people that are having kind of more of the Courtney approach, and if you want to call it fair or not, no matter what part of the window you are in, exiting of the retool, a Stanley Cup contender, a team that is just hoping to get to the second round, what happened last night in the final 2 minutes can't happen.
No, totally.
And
absolutely.
I think
it was unacceptable. It was a collapse. It was devastating.
And
I agree with that.
That's where I think part of this does get lost.
Absolutely.
Though that is true, what I just said, it is still also fair to say, man, that was a hell of a season still.
But the tone that it feels like a lot of people are taking, and I'm not trying to get mad because everybody gets to be a fan their own way.
Totally.
But we're acting as if what happened last night has happened for the last 5 years.
Can I give you the context?
Are you going to use tone?
Probably. Come on, man. You know I can't avoid it.
Touche.
I think there is a similarity with the Cardinals. Not all that long ago. Cardinals in 2021, 17-game winning streak down the stretch. Miraculous run. Got into the postseason. And, Alex, your tone on the Cardinals has been, can't get it done. Can't get it done in the playoffs, right? And that season, what happened? They didn't get it done. They lost in that one-game setting in the wild card round when they played against the LA Dodgers, and they found a way to lose. But in the end, in a very similar way, Alex Reyes comes into the game, gives up the bomb, and we all felt it coming. You could feel it coming at the end. They end up coming back the next season, and they make good on it. 2022 was a really special year, right? You have Albert Pujols come in here. He has this crazy run, and then guess what happens? Once again, they get into the playoffs, and they collapse in the playoffs against the Philadelphia Phillies, and they haven't been the same since. And the reason why I bring this up is because similar to the Kings' perspective, where the Kings got to that place and then never took the next step. And so you do kind of look at some of those series that they had against Edmonton and say, man, they couldn't break through. Maybe they missed their moment because they have some older veterans that aren't the same, or you don't expect to be the same sooner rather than later. They fired their GM today. The Cardinals in 2021 had a situation where they were building around Arenado and Goldie, and Tyler O'Neill had that unbelievable season. They had a really great year that season out of Adam Wainwright as well. Like, they had some studs on that team, man, and they were in the prime of their careers. And you never know when that's not going to be there anymore. I didn't think that Nolan Arenado was going to become this version of himself overnight, but he did. So now 2 years later, you get into a situation where Arenado just might never be that player again. Goldie might never be that player again, unless he goes to New York and now he's an MVP candidate again. But
yeah, problematic.
I bring all of that up to say, what if the version of that for the Blues is Braden Shen? Maybe this is the last time that you get this version of Braden Shen. I don't know. Or Jordan Bennington. But I have no idea if Benner is going to be this version of himself 1, 2, 3 years down the road when they are potentially in a Stanley Cup winning window with every other spot, except now you've got goalie questions at that point. So I bring that up because there are some similarities to 2021 with the Cardinals, and that ended up being a problem.
Right. When I'm not going to just, like the Bennington one, it's absolutely fair. And it just comes down to your belief in Jordan Bennington. Because for me, I think certain goalies can last you a little bit longer. But if he does falter, then yeah, you're in a problem. But like I look at the Braden Shen one, I don't think Braden Shen is the piece that helps this team win Stanley Cups. I think we're talking about Robert Thomas. I think you're talking about Jordan Kyrou. And now we're talking about Holloways and Brobergs. And
maybe, but who's your second line center?
What they would tell you it's Dvorsky or outside ad.
I think so.
But the difference for the Cardinals was their whole World Series recipe was Arenado and Goldschmidt. And those guys were 32, 33 years old, and you had to win in the next couple of years.
Booch and Benner. There's your comparison.
Yeah.
And we don't know. We don't know what Booch is going to be moving forward. We don't know what Jordan Bennington is going to be moving forward. At the time, I didn't think it was going to be gone for Goldie and Arenado. I thought that was the beginning.
But for the Cardinals in 2021, they didn't have the answers. They were still trying to figure out what they had in all of those younger pieces that were supposed to take over.
Like the Blues. The Cardinals did have positive answers at that point in time from Dylan Carlson. You had this influx of young talent that was coming up to the major league level. You got positive returns from Tyler O'Neill. You got positive returns that year from Lars Nootbaar as well. You had some young pitchers that were starting to make it to the major league level. Jack Flaherty that season was kind of figuring it out as a starting pitcher. You had Alex Reyes, who was healthy for the first time that year. Like, you had some of those things that started to work for you.
Yeah, and you believed it, and they didn't continue with it. And if that happens to the Blues,
it's not a guarantee that those guys become what we think they are right now.
And if that happens with Holloway and Broberg and Snuggerud and Thomas and Kyrou, then yeah, you're bleeped and you missed your opportunity. But does anybody in this room truly believe that's going to take place?
I don't know.
See, I don't have,
man.
I don't have that pessimism on it.
I don't think that they will revert back. I don't think they're going to regress. Let's talk about this coming up next here on BK and
there's
Ferrario.
baseball. Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Blues fell to the Winnipeg Jets last night 4-3 in double overtime as their season comes to an end. Tomorrow will be their end-of-season press conferences out at Enterprise Center. BK and Ferrario will be broadcasting live from there from 11 to 2 here on 101 ESPN. And the Cardinals back in action tonight as they take on the Pittsburgh Pirates. 6:45 will be first pitch. Miles Michaelis is on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin Heating and Air Conditioning dealer.
Hey guys, it's a very, very crappy day. I would like to start off by saying I did enjoy the season, but I really hate all the naysayers saying, well, the Blues shouldn't have been here, blah, blah, blah. And no, when we started the season, we expected a playoff berth. And to get down to less than 2 seconds and to lose that game might go down, and not just Blues, St. Louis history as the biggest choke ever. Not to mention now we have to talk about the Cardinals till September.
T-Bone is just picking these ones that say choke.
That was Evan on the mic drop feature over on the 101 ESPN app talking about the Blues and what yesterday means for them, both in the here and now and the long term. Alex, it could be. It's possible we look back at this and say, man, that was one of the biggest choke jobs in the history of St. Louis sports. It could be. It all depends on what comes next.
Yeah.
That's my perspective on this, because I do agree. I think there are kind of multiple camps that there's almost no in between right now. That you're not allowed to be in between.
No, it's just so wild to me, man.
You either think that was a huge choke job and everything else, there is no context that is necessary for anything. They just choked it away and that's blah. Or everything's fine. They weren't even supposed to be there. What a great series by the Blues. Yeah, they almost won it and they didn't. But man, look at how great everything's going. I'm somewhere in between.
I was going to say, why can't we just be in the middle and both things be true?
That sucked last night. Nothing about that was enjoyable when you get kicked in the gonads as that game comes to an end in regulation.
It hurts.
That was horrible. The worst possible way to lose as a fan is what you experienced last night with the St. Louis Blues. And also, dude, what a year. What a year, and now they have instilled that belief in you as a fan that is a springboard to success for future seasons. And that's what we were talking about in the last segment, Alex, is, okay, so I compared it to the 2021 Cardinals. They go on that miraculous run, right down the stretch, 17 games in a row, find a way to get into the playoffs. They lose that one-game series in heartbreaking fashion against the LA Dodgers. Many of the players from that team have said, man, if we had beat the Dodgers that year, we think we really could have gone on a run in the playoffs. Whether you agree or disagree with that doesn't much matter. That was their perspective, much like the Blues think they could have done some damage this year if they just hold on to that lead with 2 seconds to go. But what came next is, okay, you had that 2022 season, which was fun mostly because of Albert Pujols, and they haven't been the same team since. You had some young guys that came up, had some success on that 21 team, and a lot of them, they didn't sustain that success. The Blues had some young guys that came up, had some success this season, and we'll see. We'll see if they're able to sustain it. Alex, what is your level of belief right now that this won't be a one-off? This will be the Blues are now in their contending window, and this is going to be viewed as, hot damn, next 3 to 5 years, Blues were great. How do they avoid what happened to the Kings, what happened to the Cardinals, where it's good, and then they never find a way to break through from there?
On a scale of 1 to 10, being 10 the most confident, a 10. I mean, I don't know how I could look at this and say, yeah, they could regress. Yeah, that could happen in any scenario. But this isn't like we're talking about a couple of guys who were your best players that were 32 years old and had the best season of their careers. We're talking about Robert Thomas, who continued his dominance to where we thought he was a top centerman, and he proved it once again. We're talking about Jordan Kyrou, who you have been very optimistic about, Absolutely. And once again, a 30-goal scorer. We're also talking about a Dylan Holloway, who impressed, and he's 23 years old, 24 years old. We're talking about Neighbors, who a lot of people love. We're talking about Parayko, Fowler, Broberg, Binnington. But the reason I would say my confidence is at a 10 is because it starts at the coach. When the Blues went on their run and opened up that competitive window, it was because Ken Hitchcock brought in a system that worked every single year. If you don't believe in Jim Montgomery, then yeah, I can understand you looking at this and being like, yeah, I don't know how sustainable this is and you missed your opportunity. I will be in the camp of I think they've got one of the best coaches in the game in Jim Montgomery, and we saw what half of a season does with Jim Montgomery. Now imagine what a full season will do for a full couple of seasons it will do with the same mindset, with the same group of players that are going to be around that coach that just saw what his impact can do for a team. Yeah, regression can happen. Binnington can get hurt. Parayko can play bad. Shen can fall off a cliff. But I also can play that same mind game and say, yeah, but what if we just saw Dylan Holloway touch the surface of what he can become? What if we just saw that Jimmy Snuggerud is a guy that played in the playoffs and was competitive every single season? What if we just saw what the defense can look like with 3 guys who can play north of 20 minutes? So, yeah, my confidence on them sustaining this and opening up a competitive window, 10 out of 10.
I would say I'm probably at a 6 out of 10. I am confident that for the most part, some of the younger guys will be able to help them kind of stabilize things. But there are some critical spots on their roster that if it does regress, they don't have answers for. And I would circle Braden Chen as one of them. And like, my hope is that's not the case. Like, I hope as Braden Chen is able to play out this contract and play at the level he did this year, because he proved this year, hey, I am a number 2 centerman. But was this just a bounce back year and then it will revert back to what it was the last 2 seasons where I thought, okay, this guy's clearly on the decline? And we've seen that happen in sports before. And if that's the case, what is this team if Shen does regress again? Because remember when they had Booch playing center, number 2 center? If Dvorsky's not ready for that role, like, you can see what it does for this lineup if they don't have a number 2 center. Cam Fowler, I think he's going to be great here in St. Louis. He seems energized. What if he goes back to being the guy he was in Anaheim, where everybody looked at him and went, oh, I can't believe the Blues just made that trade. Like, there are serious, significant pieces on this team that do potentially face that problem. And then there's the opportunity of, hey, maybe some of the young guys don't take that step forward. But I think they will. I think they will be fine. I think this will be a conversation that we look back on next year this time and go, well, that was silly. But I am not 10 out of 10. I am 6 out of 10 right now, I'd say.
So I would say your future outlook is kind of dependent upon 3 guys to me, and it's veterans, really. And I mean like the immediate future, right? The next 3 years or so. That's really all you can look at for hockey. It's tough to advance beyond that. I think it is about Jordan Binnington in net. I think it is about Braden Shin, and it is about Pavel Buchnevich. If those 3 guys can at least repeat or improve upon the season that they just had for you, you're in a pretty good spot. Because then that allows for the younger guys to fit into the roles that they need to be in the here and now before eventually taking back over, right? Right now, Booch can be that top-line winger, which means Holloway fits in as that second-line winger as he continues to progress and eventually becomes that top-line winger for you. Right now, Braden Shin can be that second-line center for you, while Dvorsky continues to improve and eventually takes over for him as that second-line center. Same thing is true for Binner. Eventually, hopefully, Hofer's able to take over for you. But for right now, you've got a proven playoff goalie in Jordan Binnington. So all of this stuff is possible because those guys continued their current level of play. If any of those guys regress, it changes the need of immediate contributions in bigger roles from young guys that may not currently be ready for those roles. And that is when you get into situations similar to whether it be the Kings or other teams that had that breakthrough season and then never got to that next level. So that to me is the big thing here. I think the goalie situation is fascinating. To me, it would be the reason why I'm more aggressive over the next couple of off seasons, because I am trying to build a Stanley Cup contending roster around Binnington sooner rather than later. I look at guys, and Alex, you're going to hate these comparisons. I already know you are. But I look at guys like Corey Crawford.
Oh, Jesus.
And Tuukka Rask. Like, nobody knew it was going to happen until it happened. And then it was just over for them, right?
I think Crawford got injured, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that happens when you're in your mid-30s as a goalie.
Yeah. And what do they say? What do they say with Peyton Manning? Like, when a guy gets injured, you're bleeped.
Yeah. And if that happens to Binnington, you don't have that same backstop behind you where you just immediately believe when you go into a playoff series, we're going to win because of that guy.
Yeah.
So I would be more aggressive because I don't want to get to that place where now I'm having to look for that dude again. And we've seen what that looks like here in St. Louis. There is no guarantees you find him for another 20 years.
Yeah, I mean...
Or 50.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've gone through that for a very long time. So, I mean, you're right. But, I mean, like, we're putting all of the standards on this of an injury or if they fall off. And, yeah, if they do, then they're in trouble. I mean, you can't plan for another goaltender if he goes down, but... I see your Tuukka Rask, I see your Corey Crawford, and I use Jonathan Quick.
Sure.
I use Roberto Luongo. I use Henrik Lundqvist. Like, yeah, I'm mentioning a lot of guys who are Hall of Famers, but I'd argue Jordan Binnington's put together somewhat of a Hall of Fame career so far. If you look at the numbers, specifically in the playoffs, even look at a Sergei Bobrovsky.
4 Nations as well, you can add that in.
Yeah.
Like he potentially could have a Hall of Fame career. It's going to go down one of those two paths, though, right?
It's how hockey goes. Yeah,
and you don't know until you don't know until you know. And then when he gets hurt, if he gets hurt, when it could be over right
Sounds
then
like
and there.
my dating profile in high school.
And if that happens, and you weren't aggressive to make sure you capitalize on what you currently do know, which is Jordan Binnington is great right now.
Yeah.
That's when things get interesting. But you don't want to be overly aggressive to where now. You don't have a future in place because you tried so hard to win with Binner.
Yeah.
It's
why I find this offseason fascinating, and I can't wait to hear Doug Armstrong tomorrow when he talks with everybody about, where they view themselves at, which, by the way, all of the references you just made really does sound like dating. You don't want to be too aggressive because then you might lose them, but if you are aggressive, then you might get them, and T-Bone, it's not fun out there.
We'll finish off this show next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK for my friends over at Victory Men's Health, and it is time for you to unlock your inner champion. Have you been feeling the same way that you did in your 20s, early 30s? If the answer to that is no, it could be due to low testosterone. They could check those levels for you over at Victory Men's Health. If they find you are at the lower range of normal or even below normal range for your testosterone levels, they could bounce you back up there, get you feeling like the best version of yourself. You can do this over at Victory Men's Health. They have 4 great locations across the St. Louis area. And you can check out all they have to offer at victorymenshealth.com. When you get there, you can read about what they can do for your erectile dysfunction issues, weight loss goals that you have. If you want to learn more about their supplement shop, red light therapy programs, or their cardiovascular testing, again, all of that is available for you today at victorymenshealth.com. It's a super easy process. Go to that website, put in your name, email, phone number, tell them BK with 101 ESPN sent you, and tell them how they can unlock your inner champion today. It's all possible for you at Victory Men's Health and online at victorymenshealth.com. Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It is all sponsored by
Ferrario
that
Company.
101 ESPN app is where many of those mic drops have come in via the Scott Lee Heating mic drop feature today, and it is sponsored by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. All right, Alex, we'll put a bow on this thing today. Final segment of the day in our BK and Ferrario Rewind. We talked a little bit about the Cardinals today. We spent, I think, 4 minutes on them.
Worth
without
it,
talking
too.
to Katie Wu.
Worth it.
Her great thoughts can be found over on the podcast page after the show today. Cardinals back in action this evening against the Pittsburgh Pirates. I watched them this weekend. They are not good.
No, that's good. I'm sure we'll have plenty of Cardinals breakdown tomorrow.
There you go. The Blues lose yesterday in absolute heartbreaking fashion, Alex.
Yeah.
Double overtime. They give up the goal with 2 seconds to play in regulation. We got a couple of minutes left here. Your big picture takeaway from that loss, where things stand for them right now, is what?
Look, it sucks. That was the worst feeling that you can have as a Blues fan because there was so much excitement of what this team did this season. But as much as it hurts, and sometimes you got to keep ice frozen peas on the crotch for a little bit before it feels better, let's not lose sight of what they did from February 22nd to the end of the regular season. To me, you learned about a couple of individual players, and you learned big picture that this team has the ability to push back. I fully expect Doug Armstrong to continue to improve this team, not sit on his hands and say, cool, let's go win a cup next year. It was a bad loss that you cannot let go away, but it also sets up for what could be a extended run for the Blues, and that's where I truly believe they're going to be headed going into next season.
Yeah, the loss itself can't happen the way that it did happen. It's a disappointing end to a season that overall is a success. And the ending of this year may have been a missed opportunity. We won't find out until we see what their offseason is and then what they do on the ice in the next upcoming season.
In the last probably 10 years or so, you've seen some real heartbreak here in St. Louis. If I narrow it down even to the last 5 years, Bennington's injury against Kadri, it's brutal. Yeah. Reyes, the home run that he allowed to Taylor in that wild card game against the Dodgers, Helsley melting down against Philly, and I would put last night probably at number one.
I would put
list.
I think I'd still have the Bennington and the Kadri one because that team I thought could have won the cup, should have won the cup.
That one was frustrating. They had already at least won a round. This one was heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. This one, you felt it in your core where you're like, oh my God. Because they had it won.
Yeah.
The Bennington one, you still have to win the series.
Yeah.
This, it was there. It was done. And then it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And it was ripped out of your grasp if you're a Blues fan. So I heartbreaking loss last night, gut-wrenching, every way that you could possibly use to describe that game, it applies. And I agree with T-Bone. It was overall a successful season. Now, what I find to be fascinating is what it all means for the offseason. How does that change, if at all, what the plans are heading into 2025, 2026? We'll certainly keep you apprised with all of that. We will be live tomorrow from Enterprise Center, where we're hoping to catch up with Doug Armstrong. Many players coming on the show as well. So for Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. here on BK and Ferrario.